All right, today we got James on the show. James, what's going on, my man?
Hey, how's it going, Tony?
Man, it's going. So listen, you and I were talking here, and you started telling me some parts of your life here that led up to you getting to California. I just thought it was an interesting, it was interesting story, but also I think just kind of, I wanted you to be able to share with the audience because I want the audience to kind of have a painted picture of your life and what got you to Hollywood to begin with. Because when I was reading the email, I was under this assumption that either you had been to Hollywood for a long time or you lived there, like you grew up there. But this is all. It really kind of puts things into a time frame for me because this is all the story you're going to share today is actually something that happened fairly recently. Because I was thinking, because I didn't know how old you were, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be talking to somebody like Joseph Granda from episode 420. You and I were talking about. I mean, he's got 30 years experience in Hollywood. So like in my back of my head, I was thinking somebody like that in the sense of, you've been there for a long time, so this might have happened 20 years ago. That's not the case. This is actually something that happened in your recently, and I wanted to have the audience to give them the opportunity to kind of just hear that conditioning for the story. So I know you said you're from Michigan, and then you moved to Florida for what did you move to Florida for school?
I went to college down there. Yeah.
What'd you go to school for?
And then after, I studied film down actually
Full
at
Sail.
Full Sail.
Full Sail. I knew it, man.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard me say it on the show before, but I actually was accepted to Full Sail too back, 100 years ago. Everybody thinks like I feel like everybody thinks I'm an old man now because I'm almost 40. And when I talk about going to Full Sail, that was almost 20 years ago. But I got accepted in there and stuff, and I decided not to go because I was 17 at the time, and I didn't think I was ready to have my own apartment in Orlando, Florida. I don't think I would have been doing much schook. Anyways, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. Yeah, Orlando can get a little. It definitely. I mean, yeah, it was good times out there, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think. Yeah, it's one of those hard. I think it's like you can get a lot from it. Knowing what I know now, I definitely like realized, oh, I could have just moved up to Atlanta. So once I finished college, I moved to Atlanta, started working. But I worked on my first Netflix show down in the Keys, and it was this Netflix show. Once that was done, I moved up to Atlanta, and I was there for about almost 5 years. And then, so it was 2020, and me and my buddy Rob, we went to Bali for a month. We were just hanging out, traveling, surfing. We were doing some skating, and we got when we got back, my plane landed, and I remember I was out there, and I literally told him, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna move to LA this year." And then he was kind of like, "Yeah, sure, man. Like, everyone says they want to move to California, or you said that before." And then the flight lands, and my old roommate that I used to live with actually in Atlanta, Zach, calls me, and he's like, "Hey, man," he's like, "Call me right away." So I get this text when the plane lands, and I call him, and he's like, "Hey, my roommate's moving out, and I have an open room. If you want to come out here, I can probably like line you up with some like film work, da da da." So I pretty much I had just signed actually a lease in at this new house in Atlanta, and I had to tell all of my roommates like the bad news, I guess, and they were kind of upset. They're like, "What, man? You're gonna leave already? Like, we haven't even been in here a full month, and you're leaving?" And I was like, "I know. It's just like I have this opportunity. I want to take it." So I got someone to cover my room. I broke the lease. I signed the new lease. So this is like, at this point, I've been back for like a month and a half. This is like early March. And then stuff on the news about COVID started happening. And I was like set to move the next week. And then basically, it was the first week of lockdown. And I pretty much had to move because the new roommate was moving into my room at the house in Atlanta. And I had this new apartment in North Hollywood. And so I basically do this cross country road trip during the middle of the beginning of the pandemic, and it sucked because there was no Airbnbs because you couldn't get one because of the COVID restrictions. Like most of the hotels were closed, so I was staying at like these really shifty motels to make it all the way through, and then I ended up getting out, and yeah, when I got out here, it kind of sucked. The job that I had lined up no longer was going existent because the entire industry got shut down for COVID, and I was just basically going off unemployment and just being like, "Oh man, I made a really bad decision doing this because I decided to move to one of the most expensive states in the worst time ever." And yeah, I was having a bit of an existential crisis. Like, oh man, what am I doing out here? Like, trapped in the apartment. But yeah, I mean, once things got lifted, I ended up like working again, and probably yeah, like September 2020, I started working again. I was like dating someone at that time, and then I had moved out to Long Beach, and dated for about like a year, and then this past year I was kind of just like going through 2022 or end of 2021, 2022. I was kind of just like going through this like breakup and just like kind of just like bummed, and I ended up living on found this living situation where it's running out this guy's nice like 1984 Carver boat, and yeah, things were like getting better, and I was working on another Netflix show, and we had a hiatus in April. And my buddy Daniel, he lives in Hollywood, and we go to shows together. I actually met him at Full Sail, and we went out, and he took us to a bar near his house. And we didn't really have like a plan. We just were drinking some beers before we left his place. And we're just like, oh yeah, we'll just go to this bar. I forget the bar's name, but it's right off there on like Hollywood Boulevard. It's like has three different rooms. Like one room's like kind of more like hip hop, like another room's like kind of where the bar is, and they're playing kind of like old school like rock music or like old punk music. And then upstairs they kind of have like the deep house, like kind of like EDM stuff going on. And we were hanging out, and we were just like chilling at the bar, so packed we can barely like hear each other talk. And I'm just like, hey man, do you want to like go upstairs and just check out? Like, I don't know. It's like, it might be fun. Just like, I don't know, like dance around, like have some drinks up there. So we go up there, and we're up there for a little bit. And he, he tells me, he's like, oh, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. And at this point, probably like 45 minutes until the bar is closed. So we kind of got out a little late, and he's like, I'm going to run back down and get another drink. Just like, don't go anywhere. And I was like, yeah, man, like I got you. Like, I'll be right here. And then as I'm just kind of like standing there, this kid with like curly hair just kind of like taps my shoulder, and he's like, hey, what's up, man? And he's kind of starts talking to me, and he like offers to buy me a drink. And I was like, sure. And there's another bar upstairs too. So he goes over, grabs one. I'm just talking to him, and I found out that he actually works in film, but he works like more like low budget stuff. He was saying he was in the art department, and I'll just, I guess I'll just, for the sake of just like concealing his identity, I'll just call him Mark. But so Mark comes back with the drinks, and he's just telling me about his life, and we're just like talking, whatever. He seems like a pretty cool dude. He's like really friendly, but you know, my radar was kind of starting to go off. I was kind of like, why does this guy seem so like intrigued to speak with me? I just kind of, I kind of wrote it off, but I definitely remember thinking like this is kind of strange that he's trying to be friends with me. I mean, like, and he didn't seem like he was there with anyone, or I think he may have been there with one other person, but they weren't with him. And yeah, we're just talking about like life kind of and stuff. And then my buddy Daniel gets back, and then we're just all hanging out up there, and I introduced him to Mark, and we're just hanging out. And then basically the bar starts closing, and then we're like walking down, and I was like, yeah man, it was great to meet you, whatever. And then we're walking down to the first floor, and we're near the entrance, I remember. And then he kind of pops back up, and he's like, hey man, what are you guys doing after this? And I was like, I don't know, we don't have any plans. I mean, we're just hanging out, we're going back to his place. And then my buddy Daniel kind of whispers in my ear, can't bring random people back to my place. And I was like, I kind of told him, I was like, I know, I'm not going to invite this guy to your place, but like maybe he knows of like something going on or an after hours spot. And basically, he hands me this flyer. And at the time, I guess I didn't really think much of it because I don't really tend to like, well, especially at the time, I don't really tend to look at, I guess, like demonic type imagery or anything as like a red flag or anything. But yeah, the flyer definitely had like, forget what it said on it, but it was something, it was just the typical kind of like joking about Satan stuff on it. And it had some creepy imagery on it. And he's like, yeah, there's this after hours spot. You guys should come through. It's in the art district at this warehouse. Like it goes all night. There's drinks and like girls and this and that. And I was like, okay, yeah, like we might be down. And then he's like, all right, what's your number? And I exchanged numbers with him, and we head back to my buddy Daniel's place, and we're kind of just hanging out. And I think we got some food on the way back, and we're like eating tacos. And then he texts me, and he's like, hey man, are you guys coming through? Like, and I was like, I don't know, man. I'm trying to like convince my buddy right now. I don't think he's really trying to head out, but I'll let you know. And then he's like, trust me, it's worth it. It's worth it. You got to come. And I was like, all right. And then I talked to my buddy Daniel probably for, I don't know, 10 minutes of trying to convince him. And he's like, dude, we don't know this guy. This is sketchy. Like, and I guess I kind of just I get a kick out of like, just, I don't know, maybe risky situations sometimes. Like they seem fun, but I'm also like, we're two grown men, and like, I mean, I highly doubt it just didn't seem like that sketchy to me, really. And so I convinced Daniel to go. I texted him, I was like, hey, we're on our way. We called an Uber, and I remember being in the Uber, and Daniel was telling the Uber driver, he was like, man, this guy's crazy. He's having us go meet up with these random people at the spot. Like, how does he know they're not trying to kill us? And then I kind of made a joke. I was like, yeah, I was like, maybe that's part of the fun or something, just being dumb. And we get there, and we get out, and it's just this like sketch. It's like the art district in LA. If anyone's been there, they know what I'm talking about. It's just kind of like not the nicest part of town. And we walk in, and it's just like, they're like, oh, it's going to be $15 cover. And I was like, oh, well, I know this guy, Mark, he said he's going to get us in. And basically, he took a little while to show up, and then he shows up there, and everyone there, they kind of like, you know, the gothic aesthetic, I guess. And he shows up, and then my buddy Daniel just kind of like looks at me. He's like, I'm not sticking around. He's like, this is sketchy. He's like, I'm going back home. Like, I don't trust this. So he leaves, and I stay, of course. And we walk down into like, I guess it's like almost like a kind of like a dungeon. We walk down these stairs. There's these like red lights, and there's pole dancers down there, and just like questionable people. And I was kind of at that point like, yeah, I don't know, like this is actually not really a place I should be hanging out right now. This is like 2:30, almost like 3 a.m. And we both like buy a drink at like whatever little, makeshift. Well, it's a real bar, but they shouldn't be serving at those hours. And we get a drink, and we're just, I'm just drinking a beer and just talking to him, and we really just sit there for probably about 45 minutes to an hour, and we just are just chatting about life, about work, about things that we're going through. And then I looked down at my phone, and I had parked my car at Daniel's place, and I was originally planning on spending the night, and I'm not going to drive after I've been drinking. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going to have to Uber back to Long Beach. So that's going to be that. So I should probably get going. Was what I told them. I was like, hey, man, I'm about to have, I think it's like 3 something, like it's getting late. Like, I got to get going. And then he's like, oh, how are you getting home? And I said, oh, I'm going to call an Uber. And he's like, what part of town do you live in? And prior to this, I don't even know where this guy lives. Like, he hadn't really like disclosed that with me. And I was like, oh, I live over, like closer to Orange County. I'm in Long Beach. He's like, oh, dude, that's perfect. I'm actually like headed that way. He's like, I can give you a ride. And I just think in my mind, like, okay, it's a little weird, but I mean, if that saves me like $120 like round trip on an Uber, I guess I'm down with that, because I guess I'd only have to pay to get one back the next day. So I was like, okay, that works. And so we walked out, we get into his car, and we start driving, and we're on the highway, and we're heading, like, I can tell we're heading in the right direction. And then he starts getting these texts, and he's just like smiling. And then I'm like, oh, what's up? What's going on over there? And he's like, oh man, this girl and her friends, they're in Joshua Tree right now, and they're trying to ask if I want to come out. And I was like, what? And I was like, you're gonna go out to Joshua Tree right now? And I had driven through Joshua Tree before, and I always had wanted to camp there, but I had never actually done it. But I know the distance from where we were at to Joshua Tree, and it's a few hours. It's not that close. So I'm like, what? I was like, they want you to come out right now? I was like, that's weird. I was like, what are they doing out there? He's like, I don't know. They're just saying it's like worth it. And then he looks at me, and he's just like smiles and says, do you want to go? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go to Joshua Tree right now. It's the middle of the night. Like, I'm pretty drunk still. I'm just trying to go home, man. And then he's like, all right, all right. He's like, I understand. And we can continue driving for a little bit. And then he randomly asked me, and I'm not sure if he asked me this before his next conversation with these girls or after, but I think it was before. And he just randomly asked me what kind of car I drive. And I told him the make of the car I drove, but I gave a different color. I just thought it was strange. I was like, why is this guy asking me what kind of car I drive? This is strange. And then, and I feel really, really like, I feel so foolish for even, honestly, like going home with this guy, because I don't know what I was thinking at the time. But then he gets a phone call, and it's that girl again. And her name was Fernanda, I think. And he's on the phone with her, and then he's like, all right, all right, all right. He's like, I'm going to come. I'm going to come. And then he gets off the phone, and then he's like, hey, man, he's like, I'm going to go. He's like, they're saying it's legit. Like, they're going to be partying. Like, it's going to be a good time. I was like, and I told him, I was like, dude, it's so late. I was like, what's the scenario? Like, is it a couples thing? Are they in an Airbnb? Are they camping? Like, what is this exactly? And he still said he didn't know. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then basically he'd convinced me to agree to go. And I was like, all right, let's go, I guess. And I told him, I was like, I have to be back on Sunday. This is Saturday night, or technically Sunday morning at the time. But I told him, I was like, I have to be back uh, by Sunday evening because I have to work on Monday. And I was like really clear about it. I was like, hey, I was like, if I do this, like, if you promise that we're back at this time, then I guess I'm willing to do this. And so we just start driving. And as we're driving, probably 30 minutes later, he's just playing music and we're kind of going back and forth from like sharing. Like he plays a couple songs, I'm playing a couple songs. And he says something that's really weird. And he says, "You're really trusting, man, just to go out to Joshua Tree in the middle of the night with someone that you don't know." And then he goes, "How do you know I'm not trying to kill you?" And then it just kind of got quiet for a second. And I kind of just like looked at him because like we're pretty far further. Like it was dark. We were on a dark highway road. I wasn't exactly sure where we were at that time because I wasn't really looking at the signs. And I looked back at him and I was like, "Well, how do you know I'm not trying to kill you?" And I kind of like smiled at him. And then he's like, "Oh, that's fair." And then we keep on driving for a while. And then he says something again that's like very odd that like I don't think normal people usually say to someone that they don't know that well. And then he's like, "Hey man, so do you have like any like weapons or anything?" And I was kind of like, "What?" And I asked him, I was like, what do you mean by that? Do I have any weapons? I was like, "Weapons on me?" He's like, "Oh, just in general, like, do you have weapons?" And I was like, "I mean, I have a couple knives, but I don't have anything on me. But no, like, I don't have weapons. Why?" And then he just kind of, ignored the like question basically. And we kept on driving. And at that point, I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, this is getting kind of sketchy, but I'm like sizing the guy up and I'm like, he's shorter than me. He's pretty skinny, but I was just like, I don't know. If he's taking me to some undisclosed location in Joshua Tree, like what was on his GPS was just essentially it was like coordinates that he put in. And I was like, this is really weird. But at this point, I'm like, what am I going to do? Just like ask him to drop me off on the side of the highway and like hope that there's an Uber around. So I was like, at this point, I was like, I'm in for the ride. I guess I'm gonna see what this is about. And so we start continue to drive, and it's probably around like 4, almost 5 at this time. And then he just kept on saying like, crap, the sun's coming up. I'm trying to get there before the sun comes up. Like he was really adamant about getting there before the sun came up for some odd reason. And I don't know. I didn't really think much of it outside of at the time. Now I have more of a reason to kind of believe why he would want the sun not to be up when we got there. But at the time, I was just thinking, oh, like we're going to show up and everyone's going to be passed out, and whatever he was trying to do is not going to be happening anymore. So it's probably, I don't know, probably about 45 minutes, an hour later, it's 5 something. The sun's starting to come up and he needs to get gas and he pulls into a gas station. And I'm just like sitting in the car. And at this point, I'm pretty sober now. And I'm just kind of just thinking like, wow, I made a really bad decision coming out here. I'm going to feel like awful next week when I'm working. I shouldn't have done this. And so I'm just kind of sitting in the car, just kind of having like buyer's remorse, just wishing that I wouldn't have gone on this adventure. And he gets back in and then he's like, "Oh man, they're not selling beer." And I was like, "Of course they're not selling beer. It's like 5 in the morning." And I was just like, I don't even know why this guy wants beer right now. And he gets back in, and then we continue to drive, and we get to where the GPS ends, and it's pretty much we're on this sandy dirt road that's not an actual road anymore. And he's like, huh. He's like, it ends right here. And all the houses, it definitely has like a hills have eyes, like typical like horror, like it looked creepy where we were at. I was like, the sun was up though, and then he's like, he was saying he didn't know which way to go, but then randomly he's like, I think it's this way. And he starts driving, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, that's really random for you to be so for sure on making this. I believe you made a right turn. I was like, this is really odd that you're so like convinced that you're making the right turn. Like I was telling him, I was like, should we try to call them? And then he's like, oh, I don't really have any service, and my phone didn't really either. And so I was like, all right. So we start driving down this dirt road, and we probably drive for about 10 minutes. And I'm just starting to get kind of worried at this point, and not even about anything like bad happening, like in terms of like there's going to be people out here that are going to do something to us. This is more in terms of like, okay, we have no water. If we run out of gas and get lost out here, he has a flat tire. We have no service. So this could turn into like a bleak situation, like really quickly. Um, and then probably about after 10, 15 minutes of driving, we see what looks like in the distance. It's like we're kind of above, and it's kind of almost like in a canyon, it looks like. And it's just like these motorhomes and tents, and it looks like some really ghetto makeshift festival or something. And I was like, is this what it is? And then he's like, I think so. And then we pull up, and I had I just think it's important to note that I was wearing these Crocs at the time, so these aren't very like good shoes for like the environment. And we pull up, and it's just all these people, but it's very strange. It's not like necessarily young, like it's not people like in their early to mid 20s per se. Like there are, but then there's like I'm seeing like a bunch of little kids, like families. Like it's a really weird thing. And I was like, huh. I was like, what? I was like, what is this, man? I was like, is this some sort of like music festival thing? Like, what is this? He's like, I don't know. It's just we're gonna find out. So we park and we get out, and then we're kind of just like looking at it, and it was a beautiful view. Or I mean, it was a sunny day. I was kind of like relieved not to be in the car anymore, and I was honestly feeling like a little relieved that there was like other people around, just because I had just been in the car with this dude I had just met for so long, and he was giving me like weird vibes, and I was just glad to be kind of like around other people. And essentially we get out, and we meet up with the girl and her friends that he was planning meeting, that said we were going to meet. And I don't know, they were whatever. They weren't really friendly. And that was another weird thing, was when I got there and everyone that I kind of met, it was like they're very like standoffish. Like I've been to like a music festival before, and it seems like people tend to be, it's kind of more of like a community, like, oh, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Oh, you need a water, uh, you need this, you need that. Like people are willing to I don't know, like look out for you. And we just kind of went around, and there was this tent, and it was like kind of like a DJ tent, but like I guess they were playing music, but like it wasn't like really like a show. It was just some people were kind of dancing, and it was just a kind of like the Burning Man crowd. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was just kind of like those types of people. And I remember just being like, oh man, I feel like crap. Like I just need to sleep. So I went over to Mark and I told him, I was like, hey man, I'm really exhausted. Like it's probably 10 something at this point. We'd walked around, talked to some people for a while. And well, I'd like to know, one of the groups of people we talked to, they were asking me, they're like, oh, so they randomly asked me, they're like, are you Jewish? And I was like, no. And they're like, oh, really? And then they're like, well, what do you believe in? Like everyone here is Jewish. And I guess the ethnicity there seemed like a lot of Eastern European people. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like I'm at the time, I'm not religious. And I just said, you know, I grew up, I grew up like Catholic, parents, went to church, practiced, you know, typical Catholicism. And they kind of got like weird when I saw that. And I was like, oh, and then, he kind of pulls me to the side and he's like, hey man, you're saying too much right now. And I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, don't be telling people that stuff. And I was like, okay. I mean, they asked me a question. No, I'm not supposed to respond to it. So I thought that was weird. And then, I basically, I decided to take a nap in his car, for a few hours. And, when I woke back up, the windows were down in the car, but it was baking. We're in the desert. It's April. I was exhausted. I was sweating. I wake up. I'm like, oh man, I'm at this place right now. I kind of want to go home, but I guess I gotta wait till tomorrow. Um oh yeah, and I need a preface. I guess this was Friday night then so we got there Saturday morning and then it was Sunday. So yeah, it happened Friday night, Saturday, and then yeah, that makes more sense. I was wondering why it seemed like the time wasn't adding up. And yeah, so it's like Saturday. It's probably around like 1-ish now. Or two. It's probably more like 2 because I slept for a while. And he tells me he's going to go to the store and get some beers and some water and some snacks. And I gave him some money, and he got me some stuff. And he came back. And in that meantime, I met this guy Ollie, and we were just hanging on the outside of his van, and we were just like talking, and we are hanging out. And he had this inflatable mattress, and he kind of asked me, he's like, oh, so where are you guys sleeping tonight? And I was like, well, we just brought his car. So I guess in his car. And he has this mattress, and he just tells me, he's like, hey, man, if you need it, it's yours. You can sleep on it whenever you want. This is your bed if you need it. And I thought it was a nice gesture. And I was like, yeah, thank you. And as the day went on, he got back. I noticed that some things started to seem like kind of strange. One, a lot of people were cooking food, but no one seemed to be sharing with anyone. It seemed like kind of like a very I don't know. Seems like not very like a welcoming environment, I guess. And at one point, I'm hanging out with him, and then he has his buddy show up, and it's me, him, and his buddy, and it's this girl that they know as well, and this guy Ollie, and we're all kind of hanging out, and we're sitting there drinking beers, like having some laughs, and um, this guy, I guess he kind of is like orchestrating the whole thing. I guess he's definitely Eastern European. He had a thick accent. I'm not sure what country he's from, but he came over, and he's wearing a Mad Hatter hat, like made this Mad Hatter hat, had the card and everything, and came up to me and one other person, and he gave us these bracelets and put them on us, and he just said, "You guys are VIP. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what does that mean? And he doesn't say anything, and he just walks away. And I looked around as the rest of the day kind of went on, and no one else besides me and like a couple other people had these wristbands on. And then I was asking someone about it. They told me that the wristband, oh yeah, it just means that you can walk around any area of the premise, or you can go into trailers and this and that. I I thought it was weird, but I didn't think too much of it. And then it was probably close to like sunset, and one of the girls that we were originally hanging out with that guy Ollie, we're all kind of sitting in the same spot, and she was laying on the inflatable mattress, and it was starting to get dark. It was sunset, and she says, "I don't want to be here another night. I don't want to see what happens again when it gets dark." And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, we're just having fun. Like, it's going to be like a good time. Cause like, it just felt like it was just going to be like, we're just going to be listening to music, drinking beer. It's just a party. So I thought, you know, I didn't think anything of it, but thought it was weird because she was visibly looked scared. Like she was like putting this blanket over her and like just, she didn't want to look at anything. And then we stayed there until it got dark. And when it got dark, she was just not wanting to talk to anyone. And she just had this blanket over her. And she's just like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. And she just kept on saying, I don't want to see it. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I don't know what happened last night, but I guess stuff got strange here or something. I'm not really sure. Um, Mark had been talking about the fact that these twins that were going to DJ were showing up, and he was like really excited that they were showing up. And these two twins from another country, and everyone kept on talking about them as if like, I don't know, they're like these heroes. The twins are coming. The twins are coming. And I was just like, who are these twins? Like, I want to meet them. Like, I like seem like cool guys. And so at this point, it's probably around 10:30, 10:45, and I had been casually drinking some beers, but I wasn't drunk. And I don't know what was telling me not to get drunk, but it was like I had this like inner premonition of like just I don't know, because normally whenever I've been in like scenario with like a party scenario or there's like drinks like and it doesn't seem like there's not a reason not to like indulge, like I'll usually just have a good time and see where it goes. But I think it might have had something to do with the fact that like we didn't have like a tent, we didn't have a camper. It seemed like, okay, I don't know, I'm in the desert, like this isn't actually like a real music venue. There's not paramedics here. It just I don't know, maybe just like my self preservation was kicking in. Um but yeah, the twins showed up, and Mark and his buddy, we went over and they introduced me, and they're kind of weird. They didn't really say much. They're like, hi. And I was like, hey. And they started setting up for their like DJ set. And this is where things really start getting bizarre. And I'm sorry, Tony, like I have a hard time believing this myself. Like honestly, like I every time I talk about this, it's just like blows my mind because I know with my logical thinking mind, in my past I've had some experiences growing up, but like I've had sleep paralysis or I've seen something outside of my window before. But what happens here, I mean, I don't know. All I could relate this to is like whatever these people were like harnessing, or if they were using, I don't know, I guess in my mind it would be some kind of dark arts or dark magic that they had opened a portal to something. And as I continue to explain this, it's going to get pretty crazy. I honestly, this is empirical to me. I mean, like the, I know what I experienced, and I know that it happened, but it really just feels like it was like a nightmare. And I don't know what other way to describe, but we're at the dance, like under the tent. They have this tent, the DJ booth, and the twins start playing. And every so what was weird was during the day you had seen everyone that was there, and you'd seen what they were wearing essentially, because there wasn't that many people, probably, like, I would say under 100 people. And if and if more people would have shown up, you would have seen them showing up, because you would have seen cars pulling in, like even during the day. Like whenever you saw someone coming or going, you would easily see cars coming and going through. The only odd occurrence I had during the day that was kind of like a Twilight Zone thing that happened was I went to the bathroom in this porter potty, and I had just walked around the corner. I knew where I walked from. I walked away from the group, went to this porter potty. I came out, and it appeared as if the it just appeared as if, like, there were when I came out, there was more people than had previously been there, but I didn't think too much of it. So now we're on this dance floor. I'm looking around. I see what everyone's wearing, and it's normal attire. It wasn't what it turned into. And as these guys start playing this music, it almost felt like you're like in a trance per se. And I remember at one point there was these like little kids running around, and they started like running around us, and it seemed as if they were running at like the speed of light. It was so bizarre. And I remember seeing it and just thinking to myself, like, oh, I don't know. I just kind of like wrote it off. I was like, oh, that's really strange, but maybe it's because these lights and it's dark here and whatever. And as they continue to play, I remember kind of just like looking around at everyone, minus Mark and his buddy. They're still wearing their same stuff. I'm looking around and I'm looking at everyone's attire, and everyone looks like they're wearing these black outfits, and they hadn't had them on like 5 minutes ago. And I was like, what? I was like, how did this happen? And I remember I'm looking at like the before the twins came on, there was this one DJ, and she was like performing, and she was like turning the knobs on her set, and it looked like she was shape-shifting. And I kind of like tapped Mark, and I told him, I was like, hey man, I was like, do you notice that? Like, she's looks like she's like doing this thing. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, or just kind of like, just, it was so loud. Like he is probably like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. And then the twins start playing. When they start playing, I start noticing that nothing looks right anymore. And I'm like, okay, this is strange. I look to the left of me, and it appears, I guess the only thing that I could relate it to is what a vampire would look like. And this person had like yellow eyes and probably about 6 feet away from me. And I could see the fang canine teeth, and they're extra sharp. But I was kind of just thinking, okay, these people probably just put on some makeup and they're just doing some odd stuff. But I was watching what she was doing, and it looked like she was feeding on someone's neck. And I was really thrown off by it. And I was like, okay, that's not happening. And I kind of looked away. And when I looked back, I saw blood like on the neck of the person, but it wasn't like she was killing them. It was like I've looked into this. I guess like there's bars in Hollywood, I guess, after this experience that like people go in and quote unquote vampires, but I don't think they're actual real vampires, but they like sign waivers and they feed on each other. But yeah, I saw this and that was really weird. And I remember just trying to just like pay attention to the music and just kind of like ignore whatever you think around me was looking like. And then I turn around and I'm about to like walk out of the tent. I was just starting to feel like uneasy being under there. And I see these two guys right behind me that the only way I could describe them as if like demons had materialized into this plane and were standing there and they didn't have like, and I could clearly see them. Like if I was looking at myself and like, if I was looking at the Mark and his buddy, they weren't looking weird. Other people in the audience were looking weird. I look back at these guys. This one guy doesn't even have fingers. It's almost like he has like mitten hands and like this weird monocle thing. And they look like they were out of Hellraiser. That's like the best way I could describe it. And I got definitely spooked when I saw that. And I turned around to my buddy and I said to him, I was like, hey man, what is going on right now? I was like, do you see those guys behind us? And he just is like, he's like, you're just wigging out. Like, he's like, it's fine. It's just people are just having a good time. Like, he just kept on saying, we're just having a good time. That's what he was saying. And I was like, okay. And then I start hearing these things behind me talk. And they're not speaking an actual language. Well, not a language that I'm familiar with. And the tones of their voice were definitely on a demonic range. And then I finally was just like, okay, I'm going to chill in here. Maybe they're doing some weird stuff out here, and it doesn't seem like anything's trying to hurt me, so I'm good. And I basically stay in there for probably 5-10 more minutes, and then I'm like, all right, I've had enough. Like I'm seeing other vampire looking people. I'm seeing more demonic looking creatures standing around. No one really looks normal at this point, except like the two guys that Mark and his buddy. And I'm just like, hey guys, I'm sorry, but like there's some evil shit going on. Or sorry for cursing, but there's some evil stuff going on. And I kind of like put my hand around his shoulder and I start walking out with him. And I'm like, dude, what is going on here? This is some dark stuff. And he tells me, uh, I think you just need to take a rest. And his buddy had this van and there's this weird makeshift compartment in the back. And he essentially told me I could hop in there and sleep. And they were telling me that, oh, you're probably just dehydrated. Nothing weird's happening here. Everything's fine. Just get in here. Just get in here. And I started climbing in and I realized as I was getting in that I could actually get trapped because it was weird. He had a pickup truck, but he had this like rig set up on it, but you had to like climb in there. But I noticed that there was a latch on the outside, like it locked from the outside, which was weird. And I started getting in and then I was like, hold up. I just like had like I don't know. I just had a really bad like feeling and I got out and I saw them walking back over towards the tent and I was like, hey guys, I was like, are you guys going back in there? And then they're like, you're not, they asked me, they're like, you're not gonna sleep. You're not gonna sleep right now. And I'm like, no. And then they started like whispering to each other. And as I'm looking at them, this is hard to describe, but like, if you like drew something on paper and you erased it with the eraser, like you drew a face and you erased it, that's what was happening to their faces. Like their faces looked as if they were erasing, but then it would stop. And I was like, and they were just whispering to each other, and they kind of just like ran off into the crowd. And at that point, I turned around and I started getting worried. I was like, did someone put something in my drink? Or, I'm starting to think like worst case scenario, like maybe I've been drugged or something. But it was strange because I wasn't feeling off there, except for like visual things I was seeing. I knew I was sober. I minus drinking a bit, but I wasn't wasted. And I walked over to where that guy Ollie had his van set up, and at this point he was fidgeting with these lights. And I went up to him. I was like, "Hey, Ollie, can I talk with you real quick?" And then he's like, "I can't talk right now. I'm really busy." And I was like, "Okay." And I stood there, and as I stood there, I heard this, and this is the like one of the well, I don't know if it's the craziest, but this is like probably the craziest thing, one of the craziest things I saw. I hear this ear piercing scream, like in unison, a bunch of people like screaming at this high frequency. I turn around, I see the tent from the dance floor fly up into the air. I see people flying into the sky, and I see this green portal. And I'm like looking at this, like, oh my God. Like my stomach dropped. And then I looked back at Ollie and I was like, hey man, what is going on right now? I was like, what's happening? I was like, something's not right here. And he just kept on saying, I can't talk. I can't talk. I can't talk. And then basically I was like, okay, well, I'm seeing some very unexplainable things with my two eyes right now. So I pull out my phone and I go to try to like record this, and my phone won't even unlock. And it's just glitching on me. It won't unlock. It's just glitching. And I'm like, and I can't even get it out of the home screen. Like I'm trying to get my iPhone to unlock. It's doing something I've never seen it do. It's just like glitching. And then at that point, I was like, okay, man, even if I was like drugged, this doesn't make sense. I would still be able to like unlock my phone. This doesn't add up. So then I kind of, obviously I get freaked out. So I start walking away from what I'm seeing because it's not registering in my mind as logical. I'm like, I'm a logical person. This is not logical. This can't happen. People don't fly in the sky and portals don't open up because that's just not, well, at the time, that's not how things work in this realm that I live in. Like I've never seen that before. Why would that make sense? So I start walking away from it. And as I'm walking away, I just decided to like line the RVs that are kind of parked kind of on the left from where I'm standing. So I start walking and I'm like, okay, I was like, they gave me this bracelet. They said I was VIP. Maybe I can go and kind of hide in one of these trailers. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking logically at all because my sense of reality has now just been like blown away. Like I don't know what's real anymore. I'm like, this is doesn't make sense. And I'm walking near these trailers, and then I see these group of people sitting around this like makeshift bonfire that they made. And um this they look like vampire people. And I'm just calling them that because that's just like the easiest way I think to like describe it to anyone listening. But I can't say for sure that they were or not. It's just they had these yellow beating eyes, and they were wearing like biker type of attire. And what was strange is I'm starting to see a lot of them now. And these people weren't here earlier in the day. Like I would have seen them. It's just, I'm like, where are they coming from? And so I'm standing kind of by this trailer, and I'm contemplating like kind of walking in this trailer just because I'm having a panic attack. I'm like, this is like really bad. This doesn't make sense. And then that group of what I call vampires was sitting around this bonfire, and this lady says, in this accent, she says, she's like, what are you doing by our trailer? And I said, oh, I'm just walking around, just checking stuff out. And then she says, do you know what kind of evil's here? And then I said, just trying to play it off, yeah, it's chill, it's cool. Yeah. And then she said to me, do you realize what's going to happen to you? And I was like, yeah. And then like the hair on my neck just started like standing up, and I just turned around and I was like, oh my God. I was like, is this actually happening right now? Like, I just feel like I'm in the middle of a horror movie. And I start walking, and then I look back towards like where the dance floor was, where I was seeing like people flying around, and there's not anyone in the sky anymore. But now what I'm seeing is people are dancing, the music's playing, but they're playing really weird sounding stuff. Like it's almost like a seance. Like they're doing this chant, and they're playing like a weird frequency. Like it's hard to describe, but I guess kind of like when you're listening like binaural beats or something of the sort, it was similar to that. And when I look over in that direction, I see these hooded figures that there's a bunch of them, and black hooded figures with a blacked out face, and it almost looks like they're floating off of the ground. And next to them, there was an upside down cross, and then they had a pentagram on the ground that was on fire. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, like, this can't be real. Like, I'm going to walk a little closer. I'm probably about 100 yards away from it at this point. And I start walking like slowly closer to it. And I see that I'm like, yeah, that's definitely right there. That's not good. And then I saw the inflatable mattress that Ollie had, and he was setting stuff up on it. And there's these flower petals that were like in the shape of like a human body laid out on the bed. And then my stomach kind of dropped because he told me earlier in the day, he's like, oh, this is your bed. You can sleep on it whenever you want. And I just kind of lost it. I was like, is this really happening? And so I start kind of slowly backing up, and one of those cloaked figures points at me and then looks back at the rest of them and kind of does this like wave, like for them to start coming towards me. And I'm I'm just like, oh God, this is really bad. I start slowly walking the other way, and then anyone that wasn't in like these cloaks, like I had a couple of them get close to me, and when they got close to you, the cloaked entities, I guess you would call them, um, if they got really close, like I could see eyes, but it would almost be like a gas or something would like just kind of like cover it real quick. Like the best way that I could describe them looking like is, I guess, like the Dementors from Harry Potter. I mean, they look different than that, but that would be like the easiest like description of what these black cloaked figures looked like. And so I start like walking around this place, like just because I noticed that they're slowly marching towards me, but it almost seems like it's like a game. Like they know I can't escape, it's like they're like taunting me because whatever was going on at that place, like I could feel this energy. It was just purely evil. It was not good. And yeah, it felt as if like I was being taunted in a way. Like they knew. I mean, from what I believe what was happening, I believe that they knew that they had me in this whatever weird seance thing that they were participating in. But so I start walking around, and anyone that doesn't look like them, that just looks like everyday people that I was seeing earlier, they're walking by me and they're just pointing at me and laughing, like random people that I've never talked to. They just walk by me and they're just going like this. And I feel like I'm in like a Twilight Zone episode. I'm like, what is going on right now? And then this couple, this guy and this girl, their faces were kind of erasing as well. They came up to me and they're like, "Are you doing all right, man?" And I said, "Not really," but they're like, "Do you need a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they hand me this beer, and I don't have a bottle opener. And then they like, "Oh, do you need help with this?" And then he cracks it open for me and he hands it to me, and they walk away and they're just like laughing. And I look down at the label of this beer. There's no label on it. It's just a blank label. And I was like, I'm not drinking this. And then I just continued to walk with this in my hand. And then I broke it around the corner of this trailer. And then I was at this point, I'm trying to decide what my like move is because I don't have a car there. I want to leave. But I'm in the middle of the desert. I have no water on hand. I don't have adequate shoes to be like in this scenario. So I was just like, and I could see the city lights down below because where we were at, it was down in a canyon, but you could see in the distance, you could see lights of the nearby town. So, and I have no idea how far that's going to be. So I just do one more rounder around the outside of the perimeter of this place just to see in my mind, like maybe this is just me having a bad time. But I keep on looking at my phone. I'm trying to unlock it. It just says it's stuck at, I think it says 11:11. It's just stuck. Every time I try to unlock it, it's just glitching. And I'm just like, oh man. So then I kind of needed like a breather. So I go and like lean up against this like pickup truck and I'm kind of like in the shadows. And then I can hear them still doing these like chants. I see way more cloaked figures. And then I'm like leaning up against this car and it just feels like this car just grows behind me. I turn around and I'm looking at this car, this pickup truck, this black pickup truck, and it's 20 feet, like 20 feet tall. And it looks like these cheesy red fog in Hollywood. It looks like a gag from like a haunted house or something. And I was like, there's no way this is real. There's no way. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'm thinking in my mind, they must have drugged me. I'm just going to feel around and I'm going to feel the door handle and the door handle is going to be there because it has to be there. This is just all in my mind. This isn't happening. I go and I reach around. No, that it's like somehow materialized into this like enormous structure. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I got to get out of here. I don't care if I have water. I don't care if I have anything. So I just start walking towards the outskirts of this place. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to get out of here. And it was weird. There was this light as I started leaving. It was almost like a spotlight came and it was shining down on the whole place. But there's no spotlight. We're just in the middle of the desert. It's not possible for there to be this light coming from nowhere. And I get probably, I would say, like a football field and a half away. That's like how long the stretch of campers lasted. And as I'm making my way, I'm like, all right, man, I'm almost out of here. I'm almost out of here. I was like, I just got to sneak away. They're not going to know that I left. And then I see these three shadow cloaked entity things, and they're just standing at the perimeter. And then I start like, I'm just like, all right, well, I'm just gonna kind of get going. And one of them like grabbed me, and then I like pushed it off of me. But it was weird when I pushed it; it wasn't like a solid thing. It's hard to describe. I know this sounds crazy. It's just it wasn't. It wasn't like it felt physical, but it was so weird. And they start like kind of hissing at me, like making these hissing sounds. And I'm standing there thinking to myself, like, this can't be real. This can't be real. And then I grew up with a, religious background in Christ. And I was just, okay, I know what they hate in horror movies. I'm just going to do it. And I was just like, all right. Cause I just felt like they were just blocking me. It was like three of them and they were kind of like coming around my perimeter. And I was just like, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And right when I did that, they like kissed and they kind of like shot back. And then I start like running and I probably run about 50 yards. And then all of a sudden, it's just like I hit this force field. And I've never felt anything like this. And then I'm just I'm trying to run and I'm running, but it's like I'm on a treadmill. I'm running, but I'm going nowhere. And then all of a sudden I just see the ground like expand in front of me. And then I'm like, oh my God. I was like, this is like it just felt like I was in a nightmare that I couldn't get out. So I'm just standing there, and then I'm like calling out to my dad who had passed on, and I was like, Dad, please help me, like please, like because I at that moment, like I was pretty certain like something bad was going to happen. Like I had a feeling I was going to be sacrificed, or and it was crazy because in these moments I felt that I don't even know if I was per se afraid to die. I felt like there was something worse than death, like in this moment. And then I had this weird recollection of like my whole life, like kind of flashing before my eyes, and just thinking about how I'm like, I just really felt like I was a good person. And I'd never felt this before. Like I felt like this overwhelming good in me. And not saying I'm a bad person, but like I just felt like this like presence just come over me, and I'm just stuck and I'm trying to run and I keep on trying, and then I kind of just give up, and then I look behind me and I just see those like cloaked entities, and they're coming in the distance, and I'm just like, I'm doomed. I was like, I'm doomed. I was like, there's no way out. And then I don't know what came over me to say this, but I just started saying, I walk with Jesus. I walk with Jesus. Jesus guides me. And right when I started saying that, I start breaking through it. And it's like, and it feels like I have these weights on my foot. As I'm saying it, I'm starting to like break through. And I'm like breaking through. And then finally, like, I keep on saying it. Jesus guides me. I walk with Jesus. And then I like break through. And now I'm like running. And like the ground seemed to like retract back into like a normal thing. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, they had some kind of force field or some portal going on here. I mean, at this point, I'm not even trying to rationalize what's happening. This is more so like me rationalizing it after the fact, but I'm kind of just in flight or fight mode at this point. And I know that like, I can't fight these things because it's beyond what I can do as a human being. And, I get to, probably I say another about football field length away, and I'm just like kind of out of breath, and I'm just standing there, and I'm starting to hear like whispers, like something like the best I could describe it as is like a demonic spirit, like something like it's like swooshing by my head, and I'm just hearing like things talking, and it's like happening on like both sides of like my ear, and it would stop, and I just kind of froze still, and I was like, what is going on? And I'm looking back, as I look back towards the gathering of what that was, I see like dune buggies or car headlights start making their way towards my direction. And I was thinking, great, they're coming for me. And it kind of at that point confirmed, okay, this isn't good. I need to get out of here. So I start making my way. I'm hearing these voices. And then all of a sudden, I see these three unmarked graves. And there's not headstones, but it's mounds of dirt that look like freshly dug. And there's three of them. And there's like placards on the top of them, like for names or I don't know. But it's just a really weird thing to see after all of that. And I was like, okay. And I just tried not to look at it. So then I just keep on saying, I walk with Jesus, Jesus guides me. And this is probably, well, this is, I think, the scariest part of the whole thing for me. And as I'm going, all of a sudden, these grayish black hands come out of the ground and start trying to grab me. And they're like pulling on my legs, pulling on me, like, and I start slapping them and I try not to look at them. And I'm just saying, Jesus guides me, Jesus guides me. And like, they're just popping off the ground. And then something from behind with all its force pushes me. I fall face first into the dirt. One of these hands comes out of the ground and throws dirt into my face. And it's the most evil thing I've ever experienced. I'm like spitting dirt out of my mouth. I'm like getting up, and then the hands are still coming out. But as I'm saying, like, Jesus guides me, I walk with Jesus, I notice like less of them are appearing. But I also realize, I'm like, whatever this is, I don't feel like it can actually like drag me under the ground. Like, I feel like this is just like a trick, or they have me under a spell, or it's just, I just knew practically, I'm like, I don't think I can get sucked under the ground. It's not possible. And I just keep on saying, I walk with Jesus. And then all of a sudden, it feels like I hit another invisible like wall. And then I'm literally like lifted off the ground like a foot or so, and something just comes through my body and just starts speaking out of my mouth, and it starts mocking me, like with a different voice, saying like, I walk with like mocking me, saying like, just saying all types of stuff. And it was the most violating thing I've ever felt. Like, I felt like it's like getting spiritually, I don't, it's just the worst feeling I've ever felt. And I was literally fighting this thing with my arm, like, and it's like contorting my arms. It felt like my wrists were going to snap. And I was able to do the cross. And when I did the cross, I fell on the ground and I got up, and I was just like, so I don't even know. I'm just like, I'm not even out of this. Like, they still got me. So I start walking, and then I'm just saying, Jesus guides me, Jesus guides me. And then all of a sudden I run neck first into barbed wire. And I look, and I'm expecting myself to be bleeding. I use my phone light to look at it. And I didn't run into it, but I like clotheslined myself on it. And then I can't believe I'm not bleeding. And I feel like I must have had some like protection, some spiritual protection protecting me, because I'm calling out to God. But I look down, and there's no other barbed wire. It's like a booby trap or something. I'm like, why is there a random neck high barbed wire in the middle of the desert that is unexplainable? It was strange. And then I kept on going, and basically there was more of them, and there were some that were waist high, ankle high. So I'm like having to hop through these. And as I'm hopping through them, I probably go through like 2 or 3 sets of them. And then I can see the headlights of the cars like getting closer. But since we're in Joshua Tree, it's not so easy just to go in a straight path. And I was wearing a black jacket, so it was helping, I guess, like hide me. But I don't know how all this works. I mean, they could probably sense my energy if they're toning into some kind of dark magic. But I'm standing there, and I'm just catching my breath, and I'm noticing headlights are getting closer. All of a sudden, a fire on its own lights up in a triangle around my body, and I'm standing in it, and I hop outside of it.
No, I'm still
And
there. Go ahead. It's just my
oh, did I
camera
lose you, Tony?
malfunctioning.
Okay. And then I hop outside of it, and it goes out, and then I'm starting to hear like these voices and these whispers again, and I see what it looks like a bonfire just kind of materializes in the distance. I'm starting to get like this confusion. I see another one, and I'm pretty much like surrounded by these bonfires, and it looks like there's like people there like dancing around. And at this time I'm still checking my phone, and it's still like glitching out on me. And basically I felt as if it was a trick, like, oh, run to the bonfire to these people for them to help you. And the chatter I was hearing from these bonfires appeared to be, I don't know, the chatter I was hearing from the bonfires felt like they sounded like ghouly, like the frequencies, like the people that were laughing. So I pretty much like avoided the bonfires. My phone still not working. I walk, and at this point I see the van, like their cars getting closer, and I kind of like have to like duck on the ground, and I feel like I'm playing cat and mouse with them for at least, I don't know, an hour and a half. And then finally I get to this road, and right when I get to this road I just feel all of this like negative energy just kind of come off of me. And then my phone's working, and this is probably only about like 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later. Phone's working completely fine. I basically am on this road, this abandoned road, and Joshua Tree. There's houses along the sides, but I start to walk, and then every now and then I'll hear a car like bumping like music, and then I would kind of like hide behind a tree. So I felt like as if it was them, and I noticed the same car just doing the same path back and forth down this road, back and forth down this road. And I pretty much walked um, all the way till I got to a main intersection. And this is after like hours, obviously, of like running through the desert, like falling, tripping. I'm all cut up. I feel like I'm losing my mind. And then I text these girls that I'm friends with, and I didn't go into all of it because it sounds crazy, but I'm like, hey, I'm in Joshua Tree. I feel like there's this cult of people that are trying to kill me right now. I'm just texting you because if no one finds me, I just want you to know. And they're like, oh my God, James, are you okay? Like, and my phone is running low on battery. So I just didn't have time. Like, I was just sending it out. Just if I became a missing person, that someone would know what happened, or not what happened, but that I said something bad was happening to me. So maybe they would have them like clues on to where to look for me. But so I get to this kind of like industrial area, and there's no one around. There's a few cars coming by every now and then, and I go and I use the bathroom behind this dumpster. And then I'm just sitting there on the grass, just like trying to just like gather my bearings. And I'm like looking for Ubers on my phone, and no Uber, no Lyft. And then my phone dies. And I'm like, great, I'm stranded in the middle of nowhere after all this happened. And I was sitting there, and then I just hear this like cacaw. I look up, and it's just this crow looking at me. And it was so creepy. And I can't say I'm relating it to the experience, but it was creepy. And we just held a moment, and it just flew off. And I mean, I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, I bet it's one of their spies. I mean, I don't really think it is, but it was just creepy. And then I was just out of breath, just on the side of the road, not knowing what to do. I was trying to flag down some cars, but I'm like, of course no one's going to stop. I wouldn't stop for a random person on the side of the road in Joshua Tree at 3 a.m. Like, it didn't make sense. And so I just decided, I was like, okay, well, I'm in front of this big industrial building. I was like, I guess I'm just going to go around back and just try to sit down and just, I was too afraid to go to sleep. So I was like, I guess I'll just try to just like wait till sunrise and then try to walk to a gas station and charge my phone. And as I start walking up this road, I see an emergency sign and there's a hospital. And I had never been so relieved in my life. And I walked in and they were like, I looked crazy, like, probably because they could tell probably by my face. Like, they're like, do you need help? What's wrong? And I was just like, I've been being chased by these group of people. I just need to charge my phone. And they're like, do you want to see a doctor? Do you need us to call the cops? And I was like, no, I do not want to talk to the cops. I was like, I just want to charge my phone. And like, do you want to see a doctor or anything though? And I was like, no, I'm fine. I just all I'm asking is so I could please just sit in the lobby and just, if you guys could charge my phone for me. And I charged my phone. I looked up a taxi service. It ended up being a $500 taxi trip back to LA. I did not even care it was $500. I was like, whatever I can do to get myself away from this place would be great. The taxi guy picked me up, and I remember just being so on the edge of my seat, and he just asked me kind of like what was going on. I didn't give him the whole rundown. I just kind of said I was seeing some weird stuff out here, and it felt like it was like kind of like a satanic cult that I was like in the middle of. And he just said, yep, wouldn't be the first time that I've heard about something like this happening out here. I hear these stories all the time. And then I was like, oh, that's great. And I remember I wouldn't fall asleep in his cab because I kept on just having that like horror movie scenario where you get like driven back to the place. So I was just like, okay, I'm not falling asleep. And then I get back to Long Beach, and this kid Mark doesn't hit me up. Like, if you think if we spent the night there, he would have hit me up at like noon or like early morning, wondering where I'm at. He doesn't try to call me until like 3 p.m. the next day. And I'm already at home. I've like ate some food. I think I called one of my buddies, and I did call one of my buddies and told him about it. My buddy thought I was crazy. And then I just stopped talking about it because I realized there's no point in trying to like explain this to anyone that like maybe doesn't have like an open mindset to like something of the sort. And yeah, he accidentally left a voice message on my phone with his buddy. And then they said something along the lines of, oh crap, he was saying a lot last night, wasn't he? And then the one kid goes, I hope he doesn't tell anybody. And they like, I have that voicemail. I think I still have it. And I remember showing it to some of my friends. I was like, isn't that weird? And then when I didn't answer, he texted me, and then he's just like, hey guy, how'd you end up getting home? And I said, hey man, saw some pretty like weird stuff. I don't know, I was having a bad time. I just felt like it was getting kind of weird there, and my buddy picked me up. And then he didn't say anything. And it was 2 nights later, he texted me at 3 a.m., witching hour. I was up actually at the time. And then he goes, hey guys, so how'd you end up getting home the other night? And then I just said the same thing. My buddy picked me up. And then he just didn't say anything else. And I asked him a question afterwards. I was like, how'd the rest of the night go for you? Did you see any weird stuff? And then he just didn't say anything. And it was really weird. And I remember looking at his Instagram, and I was searching some of his followers, and I saw that like a bunch of them were into like these weird like blood sacrifice type things. And it was just really weird, like saying that they're praying to random gods and like a lot of numerology stuff. And then this one girl had a photo of her in San Francisco making this weird, like spherical design with these stones. And she's got these like fake, like crazy horns on. And she's like doing a point up to the sky with her two fingers. And I was like, wow. I was like, there's some dark, I guess, some dark stuff going on possibly in the shadows of Los Angeles, or I guess everywhere. But I had never really been, I've never really experienced any of this stuff. And it was weird too. After this all happened, 2 days later, my car broke down on the highway, just started smoking. I had to get a new car. So I get a new car. I bought this new Jeep, had it for 2 days. I'm leaving work the third day after I had it, and I get rear ended. And this is all within like a 2 week time frame after this. And I get rear ended by this girl driving a Jeep and totals my car 3 days after having it. Luckily, my insurance covered it and I was able to get a new car. But in that time, a couple nights after that, my car got totaled, I woke up and I always put my wallet in the same spot. And my wallet, I wake up, it's gone. And that turned into a whole mess because I wasn't able to get a rental car without my physical driver's license. My driver's license was still out of state in Georgia. And then the DMV in California wouldn't issue me a new one without my old one. So then I had to get an old one reissued from Georgia, but they needed me to come in person. So I was having to take Ubers back and forth to work. And I remember being all upset. And then probably right after I got my second car, after the first one got totaled, after my first one like broke down, then I got the second one that got totaled. I get the third one, I finally have it, and then I'm inviting a friend over to the boat, and it's like a Saturday, and they show up, and there was a bucket that was like upside down on like kind of like the patio area of the boat on the back, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a tripping hazard. I should move it. And I flip it over and my wallet's in there, except there's no note. No one would know. I mean, I guess someone maybe on the dock could have thought it was they like, oh, that's his wallet, but it doesn't have my address in my wallet isn't to the boat. And like, I don't really talk to many people on the dock, minus like one or two guys. And if they found my wallet, they would have like told me they found my wallet. And I just thought it was, I mean, I don't know if I can relate that to this specific experience, but there's something really important that I need to know. 2 nights after Joshua Tree, I've had sleep paralysis before. And this was like a sleep paralysis I've never had. I was having this dream that I was around a pool with my old high school graduating class. And I remember in the dream saying, I thought it was strange that everyone looked so young. And I was talking to this guy, and then this guy kind of like shapeshifted into what was like a vampire and then like screamed in my face and looked demonic. And then I woke up and I was frozen on my bed on the boat, and I see what's a black hole materialize, and one of those gray black hands that I saw in Joshua Tree coming out, and it was like attacking me. It was like choking me, and I was trying to kind of like fight it off of me, but I can't move. I'm completely paralyzed. And somehow I was able to muster up saying, Jesus says go away. And then instantly it closed and I could move. And any other times I've had sleep paralysis, I wake up the next day. It's not like when I come out of it, I can instantly move and everything around me is back to normal. Like, it was a very strange occurrence. But since all that stuff has happened, I haven't really had any profound experiences, which I'm honestly glad. I definitely think I've like, I mean, I feel like there has to be a God now after experiencing this. And I felt so bad for, I guess, doubting him for so long. But Yeah, I don't know. I know that story is a lot, Tony. Sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize for anything. I'm sitting here uh thinking how I kind of just want to, when we get to this point, just fade music in and escort the audience to the following week's show, because I don't want to ruin it by by talking. Like, this is one of the most uh bizarre, amazing, crazy, scary stories I think we've ever had on the show. The fact that this happened to you personally and you live to talk about it is insane, because what you described seemed like the entire thing was set up for you to not survive. It definitely seemed like there was an intent to you have you as a sacrifice, the way you laid things out. And those unmarked graves, who knows if those were previous nights VIPs, you know?
Exactly. And like my whole thing too is like that girl that was so afraid, like that's what really bothered me. And I had gotten her Instagram, I remembered, but like I remember I like deleted the request, but I had requested to follow her. And I remember the next day I was like, dude, I wonder if anyone, I hope anyone else that was there is all right. Cause I found I was like trying to see if she would accept like the request, and like she never accepted it. And then I kind of just got creeped out with like just even having association with any of those people that were there, because I'm like, man, because he didn't have my Instagram, luckily. So that was one thing that I was like glad that he didn't have. But I mean, nowadays with technology, if you have someone's phone number, you can just use one of the phone searches and you can see their last name. But I definitely I was worried for a while. Like I remember working like the next week and someone would walk by me and I would like jump. Like I was having like PTSD. And um I don't know. I feel like the best way I try to kind of get over it as is like in my waking life, I just kind of associate it now as kind of like a nightmare. Even though I like know that it happened, I just feel like if I hyper focus on it, it worries me, because I'm like, I just don't even want to channel that stuff back in. But I feel like the fact that I called to a higher power, and like, if you want to call it God, Jesus, whatever, I know, that it's possible that there's tons of gods. I don't know how this works, where it's a crazy realm in reality. But like, I started finding out about stuff about CERN and like Oak Ridge and other stuff. And when I started realizing all, like, putting stuff together and trying to like kind of wrap quantum physics into it too, I'm like, quantum physics even says that anything's possible within the quantum realm. So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like if anyone else has experienced something like that, I don't know, like, if they would be talking about it. And I was honestly afraid to honestly even bring this up, because I don't know the powers to be, if they like, that's something that like it's sacred, like stuff that they don't want people to know about. But it was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my whole entire life. And I would not recommend for anyone to, like, as much as people want to chase ghosts or cryptids or anything of the sort, I kind of suggest to stay away from it. But I mean, ghost hunting's one thing, I feel like, but like when it starts getting into like a demonic realm or like otherworldly stuff that's like unexplainable, like I don't know, man. It just it bothers me, honestly. I just, yeah, I definitely like late at night. I definitely sometimes I get spooked out. Something kind of starts creaking on the boat or moving around, and I get concerned. I'm like, okay, do I do I need to leave right now? Like, is something bad gonna happen? But I don't know. It's wild. And thank you for listening to this, by the way, because I know it's a lot. And I've definitely, like, I think you can't tell this stuff to the wrong people, because you're gonna look like how people like perceive Tom DeLonge with like UFO stuff, even though the government has like clearly like stated it, and they came out admitting that UFOs, we've had contact with other alien technology. But people will still write it off as if you're talking about it, because it breaks their paradigm of their reality. They can't it makes them uncomfortable. So yeah, I realize some of these topics aren't for everyone, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what the show's about, really. I mean, it's to make people uncomfortable and make them think about what is actually possible, what is actually going on around us, what's real. And over the years, I think we've really accomplished that goal of getting people to start thinking outside the box. And I think you're coming in to the show's existence at the right time, because I'm personally in the middle of an expanding of mindset and understanding because of some of the things I'm looking into. And some of your story doesn't have, at least as far as I can tell, doesn't have anything to do with what I'm working on, but it has shadows of it for sure. So first of all, I would say, I believe I don't even know how to talk about this stuff, because this is all so new to me as far as how I'm thinking about things. But I think that our when we go to sleep, I think that we're actually, not always, but I think that there are times that we're entering into other realities and other realms, and I think that somehow through the dream state, it becomes a portal of sorts, or a gateway between this world and another world. And I think that what you experienced with that sleep paralysis, and then the hands that you saw in the desert coming through the black portal while you're laying there stiff, I think you were experiencing something like that.
I totally believe. I agree. I think it has something to do with like, for all I know, this could have been some crazy lineage. Like, maybe this was always known to have happened, right? Like, it's hard. Like, if the universe was just like all these sequences of numbers and things, that is it possible that, since everything's always technically in space time happening at once, like, because space time's not linear, then potentially it's always going to happen. I don't know. It's hard to wrap your head around, but
Yeah. It definitely is hard to wrap your head around. It's going to be hard. I think forever for me. I was, while you were talking here a few minutes ago, I have very severe ADHD, and my mind went off another direction. And I was thinking it'd be really cool if I could have a group of guys that I connect with on a thinking level, for us to just get together every once in a while and think and talk about these different bizarre topics out loud, and try to connect the dots together. Because that's what happens a lot of times. I think when I'm talking and stuff, the more I talk about something, the more I'm able to connect the dots as I talk it out loud, and I hear myself. But yeah, it's very hard to fathom and understand all this stuff. Your experience, Mark, quote unquote Mark, he certainly, I'm assuming you agree with me, he certainly was in on this, and he was doing it from the jump. Like, he was planning the entire, like, he targeted you at the bar, because he's the one who initially, at the initial bar, started up a conversation with you, got you a drink, right? Am I right in saying that?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, like, he gets you a drink, and you're talking, and at the exit of the bar, he's like, "Where you guys going?" And then you went and met up with him. You and your buddy went. I'm sorry. Speak, Tony. You and your buddy went and met up with him at another location where all those goth people were walking, and your buddy left. He's like, "Bro, this is crazy. I'm not going in there." You went in with Mark, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Gotcha. And then I'm just trying to get the timeline down here. When you guys left there, it had to be really late, because it probably at least 3 o'clock in the morning, because you said that now you're in the car with him driving, and you're supposed to be going, he was supposed to take you back to your car. Was that what it initially was?
Well, so I had my car parked at my buddy Daniel's place in Hollywood, but the whole idea was that I'll come out, we'll go out to the bar at your place, we'll come back, and then I crash on Daniel's couch, and then I leave in the morning, which prevents someone from, obviously I'm not going to drive drunk, but prevents me from having to get an Uber to his place and Uber back home. But since Daniel had left early, he kind of was telling me, hey, if you're staying, you're going to have to like go home, basically, because I'm going to be sleeping. So when I told Mark I was leaving, he essentially was like, oh, where do you live? And I told him, I was like, oh, I live over in Long Beach. And he's like, oh, perfect. I'm going that way. But he didn't tell me where he had lived previously. I'm like, oh, where do you live? He's like, oh, around there. So it was just like convenient for him to, like, he really wanted to take me. It was like convenient for him to want to take me, which was odd.
Yeah, absolutely odd. So that's right. So initially you think he's taking you home, and then he has those weird exchanges through text message with people, and he's trying to talk you into going to this other party. And
Yeah.
in the car, he's asking you weird questions like, "Do you have any weapons?" And he said like, "Do you own any weapons?" Like, and you're like, "Not on me, but I have knives and stuff." He was asking because he wanted to make sure you didn't have anything on you at that time. Because of what was going on, moving into the night and the next day and stuff. He wanted to make sure that the package was secured,
Yeah, well, like this guy's like probably okay if they were, quote unquote, going to do whatever seance or whatever they're planning on doing. Target an easy target, someone that's trusting. I was trusting, not a huge guy, okay, and then make sure he doesn't have weapons on him. So then it fits all the pieces, and then also pick a person that seems like they're down for an adventure. So then they're not going to get creeped out before it's too late.
Yeah, he was profiling you the entire time and making sure you fit the profile that they needed. Not like, is he white meat or dark meat? Like, they were not that kind of profiling, but literally the characteristics that they needed to be able to have, not only get you there, but to keep you there for 24 hours into the next night where you were going to be the source of entertainment or whatever it's going to be. Now you go through this whole thing. Now, I will tell you, one, I've heard stories like this before. We don't have a ton of them on the show, but I would say that your story has a lot of similarities to a brief story that we heard on the show. It was an overtime episode. It was with Shep and Ballas. He owns IntelliHub.news. And he told a story of stumbling into an underground vampire coven in Detroit, and he went to a hotel. I think it was like a really rustic, old looking hotel. It was like a party scene, like EDM music and stuff. I think it was back in the '90s, and he went down in this basement cellar dungeon looking thing, and he talked about that in the overtime. It was episode 478, the overtime for that one. But your story has so much detail, and as it went on, I found myself thinking, how the heck is this going to end? Does he survive? Of course he survives. He's sitting here talking to me, but how does he survive? How does he get out of this situation? And
I mean, I would just say with the mercy of a higher power, like I believe that if I had too much of an ego to like be like the cool guy and be like, I'm not going to call out to God, like, but I literally told this to a couple of my buddies because they're like, oh, I hope you're not trying to like preach religion on me. And I was like, listen, regardless if you believe my story or not, I'm just saying, if you find yourself in a situation like this, you're going to be, you would be doing a very similar thing. Because once you start realizing, okay, if I'm looking at some personal evil things happening around me, and then if I can gauge that this is happening on an evil spectrum, why wouldn't there be then the opposite possibility of it? And I definitely think if I didn't like hone in to something else, I don't think I would have made it. But I do think that even as I was asking for help and saying, Jesus guides me, I think that, yes, I was getting help from God, but I think that I still had to make my own decisions in the situation. It wasn't just like I was being like guided. I had to make turns. I had to decide what I was going to do. And I think that if I would have, I mean, I could have tripped and hit my head, or I could have broke my ankle, and then it would have been over, And I think I just got really, I mean, for lack of a better term, I just think I got really lucky, honestly, because I don't see how if I would have stayed there to see what was going to further take place, even if it wasn't them harming me, I'm sure I wasn't going to see anything I wanted to see.
Yeah. I'll tell you, you're absolutely right with everything you just said, and there is no pre-qualifier to the whole Jesus thing. I mean, like I personally don't think, if say you don't believe in God, you're an atheist, and you're in a situation like you were in, and you called out to Jesus, and you're like, Jesus, save me. He's not gonna be like, sucker, I haven't heard from you in 30 years. You save yourself. You know, like I don't think that's how it works. And so, and I think your story kind of shows that. But I have also talked to people, and I always bring this up. I was talking on a radio show, and the host is, I don't know what he is. I think he does mysticism type stuff. He's not a Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm outspoken about it. I don't care who likes it or who doesn't. But he and I are having this great conversation, and I'm telling the story that I was referencing to you earlier and stuff before we started recording about my experience in that guy's house. And I think it was that story. I don't remember. I just remember talking about rebuking in the name of Jesus, and he, as somebody who is not Christian, he said on his show live to his entire audience that there's something about the name of Jesus. Now, I mean, as a Christian, I have my own explanation for it, obviously, but he said there's just something about the name of Jesus. And he told his audience, if you're ever in a jam, use the name of Jesus, and it will stop the attack that you're having. And then he went into explaining it as, you know, Jesus being some kind of sun god and all this other stuff, which I don't agree with. But the fact is, he himself recommended to his audience that they use the name of Jesus. Somebody who doesn't believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, he still told his people to do that because he recognizes the power and authority, and he doesn't quite understand why. He even said, he's like, I don't understand why it works. It just does. So in your situation, you kind of put that into practice, and it was just like, well, I got nothing else to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, because I was trying calling out to my dad, and it was like I hadn't really ever had like a connection with him. I mean, the day after he passed, I had a dream where I was in the house with him, and well, there was the day after my dad passed away. He passed away 5 years ago, and it was really rough. And I had just saw him a few days beforehand, and I had this dream where I'm in our old house, but it's not our old house. But in the dream, I knew it as my old house. And I just hear water running. And then I go over to a sink. I turn off the water. Then I hear water running in the bathroom. I turn off the water. And then finally it like leads me into the kitchen. And then I see this version of my dad, because I was his son from his second marriage. So I had never seen my dad like that. I've always known my dad to look more as like an older man. And he had like a full head of black hair, and I just saw him, and I ran over to him and I hugged him, and in the dream he was crying. I remember like hugging him. It felt so real. And I just said, Dad, are you all right? And then he said, not really, son. And then I remember waking up, and I don't know where I was getting with that, but like just how, I don't know. Sometimes I do think that the dream realm connects you with, I mean, so what I was getting at with is like, that would be the only experience maybe, and it's just a dream. So I write it off as a dream, but that would be the only, like, I feel like connection outside of like maybe hopping in my car and a random song on the radio that my dad used to like is randomly playing, or I go into a restaurant, but like stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of people have those occurrences. But yeah, like for me to be in that situation, trying to call out to my dad, I kind of had a feeling it wasn't going to work. I was like, Dad, please, like, if you're out there, like, help me. And it's like not working. And then I just knew the only other thing I could do is like, I'm like, all right, God, if you're real, like, I mean, I guess this would be the time for you to let me know, because I really need you right now. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just glad that I really thought I was not making it out. I really like when you hear those missing people stories, like in the desert or state parks or whatever. I was just like, I'm one of those stories. I'm one of those statistics now. I became a statistic. Like, and even if they found my body or something, like it would just appear probably that I got murdered. You know, it's like, oh, he's dead. We found his body in the desert. Like, and the thing that creeped me out the most is that guy Mark asked me what kind of car I drove. So it's like, okay, I had my keys on me, obviously. They know my car somewhere in Hollywood. So they're going to go look for this car to possibly like move it or take it to a scrap shop. Like, I don't know. Those are like things that were running through my head afterwards while it was happening.
Yeah.
It's just a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking too. As the story was going on, little pieces of what you had said earlier stuff were kind of popping in my head. And one of the things was him asking about the car. And I was thinking they were going to try to erase you, basically we don't know what happened to him. The only problem with that is, there was somebody that was a friend of yours that saw you leave with him. Like your friend went home and knew that you were at this location with this guy. Now, he didn't know that you left and went to this other location and all that stuff, but at least there would be somebody who's like, the last known person to see him was this quote unquote Mark guy. But even that, I mean, we're talking about some dark magic here. You don't know if what you saw that night as Mark is actually what he actually looks like. You're talking about shape-shifting people. You're talking about people flying. Like, it's very possible that Mark himself, the way he looked to you and your friend in those moments, is not how he really looked. And chances are the name that he gave you. Well, actually, no, that's not true, because you said you found him on Instagram, right?
Well, yeah. So I found him on Instagram. So I know that so like with what you're saying is interesting though, because I did think about this. So I'm like, okay, so this guy actually exists and he is a person. But then I was also thinking, I was like, okay, so say if like there's a potential, like there's a potential for vampires existing or possibly unknown stuff that we don't know. Like, is it possible that this guy his body is a host? Like he had fallen victim to a similar thing, and now he kind of like works for them. Like he's compromised, kind of like he got doxxed. Like they now took, like he's almost like living in a like Indiana. I hate to use Indiana Jones, but when Indiana Jones is like possessed in the Temple of Doom and like Short Round like burns him to wake him up, like kind of just like he's operating in like a trance. Like he's kind of like abiding to these people, like their needs or their wants. But I went on Reddit and I searched vampires in Joshua Tree, and you can probably find this post. And then this guy makes this post and he goes, "What's up with Kitchen in the Desert? I'm pretty sure I just saw vampires there." So I Google Kitchen in the Desert, and it's a bar slash restaurant, and it's like an outdoor place. They got red lighting, kind of. I don't know if we would say if it's on like the gothic demonic vibe, but it has that kind of like presence to it, I guess. And I read his post and he just says, "Hey, I was just at Kitchen in the Desert with my girlfriend," I think he said, and it was really weird. I'm pretty sure I saw him. So I DM him on Reddit and I go, "Hey man, I was just in Joshua Tree. I had a pretty weird experience where I also felt like I saw vampires. I was like, could you let me know like a little more about this?" And then he didn't get back to me until about like a month or two later. And then one day I was like on this date with this girl and I get a DM from Reddit and I was like, holy shit, it's this guy. And then he was like, and then he just says, "No way." He's like, "You saw vampires out there too?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, that's what it looked like." I was like, "What'd they look like?" I was like, "What I saw," I told him they had these yellowish eyes and I described them, and he's like, and he just said, "Yeah, man, that's exactly what I saw." He's like, "That's so crazy." And I was like, "Did you see anything else that was weird?" He was like, "No," but he's like, "They were just walking around and it was bizarre." So, I mean, I there's an account, I guess. I mean, this is a random stranger on Reddit. I mean, but I don't see why this guy would be going out of his. I mean, if he's making a post about something, a strange occurrence, and I'm also have experienced a strange occurrence, and I ask him about it, and he's telling me, "Yeah, I saw this." I'm telling him, "Yeah, I saw this too." I mean, it helped confirm to me that I didn't feel so crazy.
No,
from the experience.
Yep. And that's a huge thing, man. Even for me, receiving some stories like your story, like I listen, I referenced to you earlier into the audience that I'm working on another thing, and I am, and a lot of people have shadows understandings of what I'm working on, but I keep teasing it, but I'm working on it. It's all I can say. I've talked about it too much publicly, to be honest with you. That's why people they keep asking, when is it coming? I'm like, when it's done, I don't know. But in the process of this whole thing, it's been so it's been so confirming, but also what's the word I'm looking for? It makes me feel like I'm not crazy when I have other people and other characters and narratives coming across my plate that's telling me their version of things that tie into what I'm working on, and they don't know anything. Like it helps me know that I'm not crazy. I'm working on something, and people will tell me I'm crazy. When I drop this, people will tell me I'm crazy. People will tell me I'm lying, that I made it up, and that's fine. I've already come to understand that it is what it is. But for me personally, I don't need to listen to those people because I know I'm not crazy. And so it's very confirming for you, and I'm glad you have that. There's a couple things here I want to ask you, and if the answer is no to all of them, that's fine. But I have to ask you.
Yeah.
One, do you have a link to that Reddit post and that user that I could talk to him possibly at all?
Yeah, I can look it up and I'll send it to your email. And I'm almost 100% it's still there because I looked at it again not that long ago.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I can have the link to the post or even his username and connect with him, that'd be great because I'd like to hear his story if possible. Now, let's go with Mark, his Instagram. Can you set for me personally? I don't need to share it with the world, but can you send me his Instagram for me to see?
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Okay. And what about the girl's Instagram that you looked up that was really scared that night and we don't know what happened to her? Can I look her up too?
So I don't have. So I canceled the request. So I don't have hers, but on his following list, and I still have these photos screenshot, and I can email them to you. It's the people that Mark follows and that follow him that are kind of doing these like fake blood sacrifice things, and kind of like they have like shrine. There's a few photos, and I have them on my phone screenshotted. And I can send those over to you so you can take a look at that.
Yeah, whatever information and screenshots you can send me, I can dig from there. I mean, especially if there's a handle on there that I can look into that person and go on and surf through the rest of it. I want to dig on this if I can. And lastly, the voicemail. You said you were pretty sure you have it. If you still have it, can I have that to play on this episode?
100%. Yeah, if I still have it, I will 100% give it to you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Those are the things I wanted. So I have them typed out here. So I'll make sure I remind you of what I asked for. Now, I'm not winding this down yet. Now we talked about the unmarked graves, and I kind of hinted at it. Do you think that those unmarked graves might have been from previous nights or what?
So when I initially saw it, when all this was happening, I was like, okay, that's for me. That's where I'm going. But then getting out of it and thinking of it, I'm like, okay. I was like, is it possible that someone owns that land and they buried animals there or something? I'm like, yeah, but it to me, it doesn't seem cool. Like I almost felt like that was from people from the night before. And the thing that bothers me so much about this is that I wish I would have been able to save, like drop a pin where that location was when I was there. Because during the day, I didn't, well, I guess I might have photo. If I put in my photo, if I have a photo from there, I might be able to see the location. But I wish I would have known that, well, I wouldn't have known, but if I would have known that this stuff was going to happen, then I could have saved this like location. I don't know if I would have personally wanted to go back alone. I wouldn't go back alone, but to go back there and like see what's up in that area. But I don't know if I could bring myself to do it. But I believe that the unmarked graves possibly could be potential victims from whatever they were doing. But for me to say that 100%, I have no idea. I did look online. I'll try to find the link, but I found this old, I think it was FBI, it might have been CIA. I think it was FBI though. It was this old document from the 80s, and it was like revolving around like Satan, because I guess there was a huge in the like late mid to late 80s, like a huge kind of like satanic scare. Maybe it was late 70s, but there was a huge satanic scare kind of like after the whole Charles Manson thing. And they would find like I guess like mass murders or just like human looking sacrifices in random places like the desert or the woods or whatever. And they started looking into it. And I guess from some of their accounts, like, I mean, I don't know how legit this document is. I found it. I was Googling it and I found it, and it was like a 50 to 70 page document, but it said on it, there was sacrifice dates. And one of the dates was the date I was there. And it said, human sacrifice, animal sacrifice, or child sacrifice, man or woman, any sexual. It was just going into all this stuff. But I was just like, oh, I mean, I don't know if this confirms exactly what they were trying to do, but I mean, I guess ritual sacrifices do tend to take place on certain days, and I guess with like possibly have something to do with the moon. I don't follow the occult that much, so I don't know enough of the info to like verify like if I think like this document's like super legit. But if I could find that too, I think you'd find that possibly interesting to like flip through.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can send it to me, it'd be great. If you find it, I would say that there is a lot of little truth with little lies that the CIA puts out and that these organizations put out. What you were talking about, the Satanic Panic era, we actually interviewed a guy actually at a
Satanic Panic. Yeah. Satanic Panic.
I talked to a guy whose dad was arrested based off of that stuff, and his dad was in jail for like 17 years or something, then released. And he talked about having to mend relationships with the family, with his dad, because they were manipulated to believe that their dad was a Satanist and was trying to, feed them to Satan essentially. And none of it was true. It was just all this Satanic Panic era stuff. I forget.
It's kind of like the Salem witch trials,
right?
Like,
but the thing is, there's this stuff. So the Satanic Panic era was real, where there was a lot of lies going on. There's a lot of false narratives, but there was truth within it as well. And maybe the document you have is on the truth side. Before you were about to say something, what was the date that this happened?
I'd have to go and look on my phone. I know this sounds weird if I don't have the exact date. I have to look at the photos, but from what I remember, I think it was April 3rd. I'm pretty sure it was April 3rd. It was April 3rd, I believe.
Okay, so April 3rd. And what year?
Well, because it would have started 2022.
It was this year. Or no, last year.
Yeah, it was
last
in
year.
April.
Yeah.
Or last year, but technically it's like hasn't even been a year. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So April 3rd, 2022.
Almost positive that's the day. And if I look at the calendar, I can, let me check. We'll end the call if I look real quick.
No, you should be fine. I just won't be able to see, which is fine. So you can look away.
Okay.
Now I would say that's interesting. I don't know the significance of dates and stuff. So I know there's a large portion of my audience that would know way more than I would on that stuff. And so they'll be digging for sure. That's right around the time I moved to Tennessee. I moved April 14th to Tennessee. So 2 weeks leading up to that, I'm trying to think of.
Yep. It was April 3rd. So April 2nd was Friday was the day that April 1st was the day that we went to that bar. So it would have been the 2nd that night, when early Saturday morning when we got there. And then Saturday turned into Sunday night. It was past midnight. It was around 10:45 when all this stuff started happening. So it went into the 3rd. So April 3rd was the official, when it was all taking place.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we were able to narrow that down. Now the pictures you're referring to, what are they? Screenshots from the Instagram accounts that you were taking pictures of, or what?
Yeah. I mean, I might be able to. can I actually share them with you on here right now? I might be able to.
Yeah, I mean, like, you mean on the Riverside app?
Yeah, I could send them over so you could look at them right now if you wanted.
Yeah, go ahead. If you, I'm not sure if you can send pictures on the Riverside app, but you can text it to me if you want. But I actually, my the company phone's in my office. So, are you gonna text it to me? I can run over and get it real quick.
Yeah. I'll text it to you.
All right, I'm gonna run over and get it real quick. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back.
Okay, so I'm gonna text him right now. And these are some of the people he's following and the people that were following him, just so you're aware.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to see this. This is so much fun. I like digging into this stuff. Let me ask you something. You said something very passing when you were telling this story. You were talking about how when the crazy stuff happened, you wanted to, whoa, this, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So this is what I saw afterwards. And obviously I was like freaking out because I showed this to some people and they were like, dude, those are just California weirdos. But I'm like, okay, but you don't think this holds any weight to like my story if he's like following these types of people, that it would be kind of bizarre that they're doing what looks to be like blood rituals.
Yeah, that's crazy. I gotta figure out. I want to make sure I don't open the doorway for people to be harassed if I share these, but maybe I can block out the handles. I don't know. I have to look into it as far as the legality. I just don't want to. I don't want to get in trouble with people because in all,
I don't want us to get in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I'm talking like legally in trouble with these people. I'm not worried about. It would be quite the adventure if they came knocking on my door. But that's interesting. I'll at least share the photos themselves with people online and stuff for this episode. Now, you mentioned in passing during you telling the story that when and correct me if I'm wrong as far as how I say this, it's just from memory, but it was a really bizarre point. The tent goes in the air. People are now flying in the air. And is it under the tent there's a portal, a green portal?
So it was really weird. What it ended up looking like was a UFO, like a typical. Okay, so like the tent was above the portal, and it was making the portal appear to be like some sort of UFO, and the people were swirling, like flying in the sky, looking as if they were getting sucked into this portal. I can't confirm if they're getting sucked in. It just that they were flying in the sky, and it was just kind of like I felt like I was in Stranger Things or something. I'm like just seeing something, like I'm seeing the Upside Down for the first time. I'm like, what is like? It was just mind boggling. But so the tent above the tent like just lifted up like it was a vessel, like it was a spacecraft or something, and it lifts up and when it's up there, this green portal opens up underneath it, and then the people are in a diagonal line, like swirling circular in the sky, like screaming bloody murder. And yeah, when my phone was glitching and I was trying to record it and it wouldn't unlock, I basically turned away and I looked at that guy, Ollie, and I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm like losing it. I'm like I'm freaked out. I'm like, this can't be happening. And then he's like, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, even if I was like out of my mind and I was like drugged and I was going up to this guy that I shared hours of conversation with earlier in the day, if I'm going up to this guy, like, what's going on? Like a normal, compassionate human being, even if like someone was losing their mind, would be like, are you all right, man? What's happening? Like, what are you seeing? Like, he's just completely like disregarding how I'm acting. Like, it's just like, I'm freaking out. If a homeless guy comes up to you and starts like freaking out, you're going to be thinking in your head, like, okay, this guy's crazy. he's freaking out. You're not going to think much of it. You're like, that's normal. But if it's your buddy or someone you just met where you spent hours and you had a conversation with them, if they came running up to you freaking out, you probably would give some type of compassion to be like, what's wrong? Are you okay? Like, do you need some water? Like, talk to me. What's going on? And this guy was just completely just like, was like ignoring me. Almost like I felt like I was like a ghost. Like he was just like, couldn't see me. Like, go away. Like he didn't say go away, but that's like what it felt like. He was just like, I can't talk right now.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, what?
Like you were annoying him, a bother.
Yeah, like I'm bothering him, but it's also like we're at a place where people are partying. I mean, whatever he's doing with these lights isn't like make or break. Like, it's not like he can't put that to a side for 2 seconds and like talk to me for 30 seconds.
Right.
Which what I found to be very odd, because I feel like normal people don't typically do that. And I don't know. I started thinking, I was like, is it possible that there is, and not in all EDM music, but in some of the music scenes, that there is like this underground kind of dark demonic cults that are kind of like running it. And a lot of these shows are like smaller circuit festivals, possibly are more of like a ritual, like, and then maybe not even like a blood sacrifice ritual, but just for whatever. They're just, worshiping whatever, but it's not like a lot of these things are on the basis of love and free spirit and energy. But like, is it possible that some of this stuff actually has a darker undertone, and some people might get like wrapped into things that they don't even realize they're getting into, because they're going into it thinking it's just a good time.
Yeah. No, I don't know you. I don't know what you think about things, but you're talking to somebody who would just say absolutely yes. And and so episode 331, we kind of talked about it on the show. I had Joel on, who's a good friend of mine. He's been on the show several times. And he is a Freemason. To this day, he's still a Freemason. He's not practicing because of what he knows, but it's not like, he turned his card into anything. But he pursued Freemasonry because he wanted to climb the ranks in it, because he was trying to get more power for the music industry, because he was trying to advance his career in music. And he thought the best way to do it was to go about the dark arts, essentially. And so there's that. And there's another example I was thinking, just recently, was it last year, the whole Travis Scott concert thing?
Oh yeah.
Like the videos that were popping up, and I didn't really do deep dives on it. I was actually trying to get another guy on the show to talk about it, but he just kept ghosting me, unfortunately. But
yeah,
there's a lot of videos that were just questionable, and people can say, oh, well, that's just a hoodie. There were things that were popping up in videos from that whole night that seemed very demonic. And so there's definitely an underlying, and if you think about it, it makes sense, because when you look back at just like history and, Native Americans to tribes in Africa, the roots of humanity, a lot of it is spiritual, and a lot of it comes through music, dancing, and there's a spiritual energy that happens when people are putting their intent in certain directions when it comes to music and dance, and so. Yeah, I what you just said, for me, it's like absolutely 100%. I have no doubts that that's the case. You mentioned about the phone not working properly. Like I think you said you had it unlocked, but you couldn't move it off the home screen. The time you mentioned was 11:11. Does that mean anything to you?
Or I think it was 111, but yeah, so I 111, I don't know. So in the past probably 6 years, 6, 7 years, 8 years maybe, I've noticed, yeah, like everyone's had these occurrences. You look at a clock or your phone and it's like 333 or 444 or 555. Like you see these things, and I know kind of like in the astrology realm or kind of more in like the spiritual mystic side of things, like numerology, like they're like, oh, 1111, something good's coming. Um, I've kind of like learned recently that numerology is kind of has a basis in witchcraft a little bit. And I don't know, it's possible. I think that it being at 111, I think that, I don't know, it was just so weird. It's my phone was froze at that time, and it would just, it's the strangest thing. So this glitch is not like, it's not like a glitch where it's like TV static, but it was more like everything on the screen would start just like shaking, and like it was almost like dissolving. Like it did, like it's like me trying to unlock it was like pissing something off. And when I hear some of these other accounts, like I started listening to your podcast, a couple other podcasts. I found that yours was kind of the most informative because you actually like asked the people why you think things are happening. Like a lot of the other podcasts are just like people sharing stories, but there's no like depth into like other areas of it. But I found that from other stories that I've heard, whenever someone sees like a UFO or an unexplainable thing, for some reason electronics cut out. And I'm starting to think, because I felt those force fields, that it has something to do with a frequency that's taking place when these things occur, where our modern day electronics don't operate. Like I was even thinking, if I had my car out there, like if I would have drove out there, I wouldn't have been surprised if my car wouldn't start or something. And I mean, and I can't say that any of this I know for a fact. It's just from like, hearing other people's accounts, and I guess just thinking about frequencies and potential frequencies that something could emit. Like if a portal to another dimension was opening, or kind of like what I found out about aliens is like, they aren't like the aliens that people are seeing aren't actually from Mars or from another planet. It's like they're coming from another dimension and they're materializing over however they're doing it. But it's possible that they're using sound frequency, and I've heard about like this with like, I guess like the Egyptians and stuff, is like they harness sound and I don't know, how much of that is, fact or fiction, but I think that's like when these things occur, that if a portal were to open, if that's what happened, they open some portal with whatever dark energy they use. By opening that energy now that's being like admitted is now affecting any of the technology that's like in the area, or maybe it has a control over it as well, something that we may not fully understand. And I mean, that's the only thing I could really think, because like why are there so many accounts of people seeing something and they take a photo or a video and are deleted, or my phone crashed, or my phone stopped working and restarted. Like I've heard these accounts a lot, and it makes me think that it could have something to do with that.
No, absolutely. I don't think it's an accident that your phone stopped at 1:11 in the morning. I don't think that it's an accident that it happened at the moment it happened. I mean, just in the sense of a portal. I mean, just in the very basic sense, at the very least, it's reasonable to say that if you have a portal opening up in front of you, there's a good chance it's sucking energy from something, and electronic devices around it could very well be affected by that in just that general sense. This portal you said was green, right?
Yeah, it was green.
And was it like was it a circle, or was there a visible shape to it?
So it was spherical, but it was like green, like with black swirling in it. So it like um imagine like it's mainly green,
but it looks like it's a spiral. It's like spiraling kind of, and there's black within it. So almost like a black hole, but it was like green. It's hard to explain. I mean, I guess you'd have to see it to like understand, but I think that's like the best description. It was spherical, and how it was like resting under the tent of how the tent was resting above it made it look in the sky. Like if you just saw it like from afar, you'd be like, I'm seeing a UFO right now. But I realized, I'm like, this isn't like an alien space. Well, I mean, it's not an alien spacecraft. It wasn't extraterrestrial from what I was seeing. It was mimicking that appearance for whatever reason. And it's also like happening in the desert, which is like a common place. And it started making me think that some of these accounts too of people thinking that they're seeing a UFO, that they could, I mean, I believe there are unidentified flying objects, some military, some potentially from other dimensions, I guess. But it also got me thinking that it's possible that some of the sightings that people are having of UFOs, I'm like, what if it's not a UFO at all? And it's like a portal, or it's something else that they are just misinterpreting, like they are viewing it as a UFO because that it's giving that appearance of it to be a UFO, but that's not exactly what it probably is in all cases. And I think that that's definitely a possibility of what's happening with some of these UFO encounters, is people are thinking they're seeing something that they think is a UFO, but it could actually be something completely different. It could be a portal or something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the location you were in is some kind of portal location. It wasn't just a spot where it's like, hey, this is a good spot for us to set up and do our ritual. I think there's something very significant about the location you were at. I would listen, if you can figure out where that thing is. If you don't want to go alone, that's cool. You can take me. I'm serious. Like I want to check this place out. I might even just squat down in the bushes and wait for them to come back at night. But this location seems to be important, and it's probably some kind of portal location in itself. And I say that because of what happened to you when you went to the bathroom. There seemed to be some kind of shift that you didn't experience with your eyes because you went to the bathroom, and I think that was probably intentional. If there's a controlled environment going on where which clearly there was that night, it was a very paranormal, black magic, dark, controlled environment. It wasn't at random. And if that's the case, then there's a good chance that you were in that controlled environment the entire time. You just got to see the party at night. And so there's a really good chance, I think, that there was some kind of portal shift into the bridge, is the only thing I could say, is that you weren't in another realm, I don't think, but you weren't totally in this realm either. And I think that's what you were experiencing when you were trying to get away, is you were
100%
leaving the portal. You were leaving the bridge. You were trying to get off the bridge that night.
Like it's like a gray area. That's what I was thinking. So, I like that you brought up the coming out of the bathroom, because that's when I noticed things didn't add up. But because I was like, how did all these vehicles get here in this time? And why does it seem like me walking back now to where I was just at feels like this like big excursion, that it didn't have that, it wasn't like that on my way there. And it's kind of like when you hear when you hear those accounts. I know you had some people on your show, and I've heard on other shows, when people are in state parks and they go down a trail, right? And then as they're going down the trail, and then they start coming back, and now there's another trail, or things have changed, and now they're lost, and they can't find their way out, and it seems like they entered into and like things get super quiet. That's what I noticed too. That was like getting eerily strange. Is I remember when I was like running out of there after like I experienced all demonic type stuff happening. I remember just being out there, and obviously it's at night, it's in the desert, it's going to be quiet, but it was eerily quiet. Like, it was so quiet that I felt like if I just step too hard, they're going to hear me. And that's not like, and when you're out in nature, like, I feel like you should hear like the crickets and the bugs and the wildlife. And it just seemed like everything it felt like being in a void, like you're in a vacuum. And I think that, I think what happened was, yeah, they opened something and we're in this realm, but if space-time is not linear, but it's parallel and it's all happening at the same time, is it possible that certain realities or dimensions could then converge? So maybe those like things that I was seeing, those entities, is it possible that they were there, but only because they shifted for that time? And maybe that's why when I tried to run and I was getting blocked, it was like most of this stuff could only happen within a perimeter of this energy field. And if you got out of it, like when I got to the road and I said my phone worked again, and then the time, I watched the time just change in front of my eyes. And I was like, okay, I've never seen my phone do that. I mean, I've seen it change like by a minute, but I've never seen it change from like a different hour. And I mean, it just seems as if it's just really made me realize that what we're experiencing here isn't what everyone actually thinks it is. And, you know, I know talking about an account as crazy as mine, you know, it puts you in like the loony bin area where people are gonna be like, this guy's off his rocker, but okay. But the thing is, like, some of my close buddies that I told why they honestly, that a couple of them came up to me and were like, dude, I believe you. Like, we're just hanging out, having a beer, or like just doing whatever. And I was like, why do you believe me now? And they're like, well, if you were actually losing your mind, you wouldn't be acting normal still and like going to work and like living your everyday life. Cause I'm not like every time I hang out with them, I'm like bringing this back up and I'm like hyper focusing on it. Cause it's not stuff that they're interested in. But I think from them, like hearing the account and then me continuing to live a normal life, it suggests that, okay, is this guy actually crazy? Or did he actually experience something like otherworldly? And we don't know what it is, but the best that we could do is, you know, like put two and two together and kind of just think like, okay, like if I talk to a random person and tell them this account, they're like, if I was talking to a random girl or guy and I told them this account, they'd be like, I don't believe that because I believe in science. I'd be like, okay, that's great. You believe in science. And then I would ask them, since you believe in science, then do you know what rate this bottle cap's going to fall at when I drop it out of my hand? They're like, yeah, it's going to fall at whatever the gravity rate is. I'm like, no, but do you actually know the rate? It falls at 9.8 meters per second. A free falling object falls at 9.8 meters per second. And it's just like people very easily off-write things that they don't understand as crazy while not even knowing basic physics principles in their own reality. So it's like, if you don't even know your own basic physics principles, but you say something's crazy, well, it's just crazy because you haven't experienced it. But I believe space is real. I believe people have gone to space. Okay, but I haven't been to space. But the reason that I believe it, I could be one of those people that think this is all, you know, a matrix, it's a setup. But the reason why I believe it is because people are showing me, like, you know, fact and evidence, but I haven't actually experienced it myself, you know? So with that frame of thought, something's only real as if you've experienced it. Well, not every person on this earth has experienced every circumstance. So I think there's a lot of room for the unknown and the paranormal. Like, I mean, all this happening to me, this could be a lineage thing too. I mean, my mom's from Brazil, and I know that it's possible that my grandma, like, even maybe has something to do with dark dark stuff. I'm not sure. I didn't get to meet my grandmother that much on that side. And it's just anything's possible. But I tend to think that like this was like, even though this guy targeted me to bring me out there, was there also something else like happening? Like it was like almost like a predetermined like quest, I guess, like a spiritual crusade or something that I had to go on for some weird reason. I don't know. I mean, I've just thought about this stuff for so long. It will drive me crazy trying to come up with the whys and hows and whens of it all.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It can drive you nuts thinking about it, trying to understand it. Yeah, I think that if you were crazy, the crazy would show up in other areas of life too. And that's probably what your friends are thinking. Like, if you were losing your mind, you would have been like, guys, listen, I know I told you that crazy story, but last week at the gas station, there was a flying person over the gas station and they offered to pump my gas. Like, it'd be like, what the heck is wrong with this dude? But the fact is, like, it was this one-off experience, and you're continuing to live your normal life outside of that, which I think really kind of helps them. I'm really glad, by the way, that some of your friends are like, dude, I believe you. Because, I mean, you need somebody in your corner when it comes to this stuff, just so you don't feel like you're alone. Let me say this, and then we'll start winding things down. I'm going to bring up two different things. One's more commentary. One's more, I need more information if possible. The vehicle that you said was like 20 feet tall.
Yeah,
there might be a possibility that the vehicle didn't grow, but you shrunk. You ever think about that?
So I didn't. I actually haven't thought about that. But that's very interesting that you bring that up, because while I was kind of going through all this, and when I was seeing like those bonfires popping up and what kind of looked like, I guess told my friends they seemed like witches, like by the noises they were making. And I felt like it was like a setup to get me to go run over for help. But I felt like when that stuff was happening, I was starting to experience like confusion, but like a confusion that I've never had. Like I've had a concussion before growing up from skateboarding and snowboarding. And I know what like base level confusion feels like, but you can still like formulate what you're thinking. But I remember when I was like almost breaking out of it, like I was getting further and further away, I was starting to like kind of like, it might be something to do with like PTSD as well. Cause I think like when you experience something so crazy, it kind of gets you going. Like, but yeah, shrinking. What do you mean? What do you think? Like I actually like physically shrank, or it was like my perception. They were like manipulating my perception on things.
Yeah. So I'm not saying you were like hit by a stun gun, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing. But you're in this alternate state of existence, from what I believe, from what it seems like to me. It seemed like it kind of clicked with you too when I was talking about the bridge and all that stuff. And within that state of existence, I think like what you said a couple of times while you were telling the story, this doesn't make sense. This isn't like you have to throw that all out the window when this stuff is happening around you. It's like nothing's going to make sense. Your traditional understanding is not going to make sense. If anything, the only thing that's going to make sense is the coming to the acknowledgement, realization that everything you've been taught is real is a lie, and that reality is far more real than what the real is that we've grown to understand. That's why by the time people hear this, they'll have heard the episode where I talked to a guy that he dreamt about a dog man that was coming at his family. He stepped in between. This thing started tearing him apart. He opens his eyes. He's sitting up in his bed. He's got scratches on his back, bruised handprints on his shoulder. And one could say that, this was, him doing it in his sleep and stuff, until not long after, him and his son were walking through the woods, and they both saw this beast. What he quote unquote dreamt about was now standing before him. And there's this idea that I'm working on where our minds when we sleep, there's some kind of gateway and portal opening that can happen, that allows things to enter in just as we enter into this reality, just as we enter into this other state of existence in our dreams. And with that note, there's a lot of shadows with what you experience in that vein. And within that realm, I think we have to just throw away everything we think we know and just say, on a basis by basis situation, take in the information as it comes, and like, okay, I'll figure out what to do with this later, but this is the situation now. And so there might have been several things going on where either, maybe you actually did shrink in this other state of existence, this bridge area between two different realms, where things don't operate the way we think they operate. But maybe there's a perception thing too. It's very clear that there was a lot of dark energy, dark black magic going on around you. There's a very good chance that you were under some kind of spell, and under some kind of spell, what are you seeing? And we talk about that with the topic of Dogman. Ward from Dark Holler, he's my cameraman for these adventures we're going on, and he presented on the very first film, Expedition Dogman, this idea that occultic workings, one of the things they'll do is for a ritual is they'll actually put on the skin of a wolf, and they'll do a ritual. And the idea is
go ahead. That's what happens in the I believe it's is it Carlos Castaneda or Daniel Castaneda? But that's what so it was like in the late 70s, this guy goes and meets with this shaman, and he goes to learn the ways, but this guy is basically he does that shape shifting, and he teaches him the way.
Yeah.
And this is the guy at the gym that was telling me to read this book, and I'm like, I start reading it, and I'm like, I think I'm going to put this down because it's getting a little dark. I don't know if I just don't want to attach anything to myself at this point.
I forgot about the guy at the gym. We'll come back to it. I just want to say that the idea that somebody might do this ritual, and as they're casting the spell, they're not transforming as much as the people around them perceiving what they're quote unquote trying to transform into. So the people around them fall under the spell, and so they see this werewolf dogman entity, which is actually just a man wearing a wolf skin casting spells on people. And so a similar vein where maybe you're in an environment where you are starting to see things that aren't really actually there.
Because I'm under it being under the trance of the spell, basically. So it's like the hands coming out of the ground. Were there actually hands coming out of the ground, or was it part of this spell? Or like, I'm getting pushed. I'm actually physically getting pushed. Maybe they are pushing me, using their energy to do it. But as far as like the things that I'm seeing, they might not actually be materialized. They're not maybe actually even there. It's just it's like in my mind. It's like almost like they got in your head. They're making you see the story that they want to see. And maybe that's part of what like a sacrifice is sometimes, is that they get their victim host, and they have them. It's basically maybe everything I was doing, I was going through it in the right way. Like maybe they knew I was going to run in that direction, and then that was going to happen. And then those things were going to happen. And then I was going to see fire light up around me. And it was just a big part of the ritual. And so I finally give up, like, because probably most people would break, cry. One thing I was thinking about that I'm so glad that I went alone is that if I was with my baby, or if I was with someone else and we were both going through this, I feel like certain people would have broke, and I don't think I could have like left them behind. And then I think that potentially could have ended up both of us being goners. And he really wanted my other buddy to go. And my other buddy, he can be clumsy sometimes. And I could totally see him like rolling his ankle, or just like wanting to stick around, like, oh, it's okay. It's just people in costumes, or like, you know what I mean? Just trying to rationalize it until it got too far.
And then he's like, oh shit, we need to get out of here. And then I'm just glad that I just had myself to look out for, because if I had like a partner or a friend, I think that the scenario would have ended like completely different, in my opinion. And I don't think in a good way. And can I be sure about exactly what was going to happen? I mean, maybe they weren't even going to sacrifice me. Maybe it was just going to be like they were just going to initiate me into whatever cult they have going on. And then I was going to be kind of like the recruiter for the next one, right? But I tend to believe it was going to get darker than that. I mean, when I saw pentagrams on the ground and upside down crosses, that's not, I mean, there's fake Satanists, like people that joke around about it and wear a shirt with some cryptid stuff. But then when you see something like that, you're like, no, these are people that are actually like worshiping this stuff. Because you don't just bring this stuff out to the desert and just start putting it up as like a joke when it's supposed to be like a good vibe. Like that's what I never got about like Satanism, is like people like joke about it and make it out to be like not that bad. But I'm like, what's cool about liking evil shit? Or liking evil stuff. I never really.
Yeah, no, yeah. So you can't, for your situation, you can't say that they were trying to play a joke on you because of all the things that you saw. So like you saw the tent go up in the air, you saw people flying, you saw a portal open up. Like you had this experience with the vehicle. You had the experience with coming out of the porta potty and more people being there. Like there were so many things going on that it wasn't just some people playing a prank on you or trying to do some weird initiation into like this. Now you're part of our group. Like it at the very least that's what the goal was, of them just some kind of weird initiation into this cult. But I tend to agree with you. It seems like it was going to be a lot darker than that. And I'm glad you got. Obviously, I'm glad you got away. Your friend that was supposed to go with, or that left, and you were now by yourself. So one, I would say that, and this kind of has nothing to do with what I'm about to say, but I just want to say that recently, everybody's been talking about that new Netflix series Dahmer, and I hadn't watched it until last week. I was working in the office and I just turned it on for background noise. Everybody's talking about it. And it really struck me. And I brought this up earlier in the conversation with you here, and then beforehand, that guy that I went to his house. It really struck me in the sense that I really feel like I might have been in a very similar situation as some of those victims with Dahmer. Because of how the whole thing went down with him trying to get me in his basement. And I really think if I would have went, I think that I wouldn't be here. But two, I think there was a spiritual aspect to it where I don't think that I think there was a real strong spiritual protection going into that moment that allowed me to walk out of there. And I don't know why I brought that up. There's something that struck in my head. But let me ask you about your friend. Your friend leaves that night. You're now flying solo, and you're kind of glad he's not there. You're doing this by yourself, so you could get out and you don't have to worry about anybody else. And I think that's kind of what I was thinking about, because I was like, I'm kind of glad I went by myself to this guy's house so I could just bail when it was time to get out. And I realized something was going on. Because if I would have went with somebody else that was a Jesus person, they're like, oh no, let's talk to him more about Jesus. It's like, no, we got to get the freak out of here. Okay. This guy's trying to chop us up. Like, did you tell him what happened that night? Did you ever talk to him about what happened after he left?
So I called him the next day and I told him, and he was kind of like, what the fuck, dude? Did you you just took some like drugs or something? Like, that's what he was like just telling me. And I was like, no, dude. I was like, I'm telling you, I was sober, man. I was like, I was like, dude, for what I saw, you would have to be on extreme dose of something to like, it just physically getting hurt. Like, cause you don't get hurt. Like you you don't feel things like that. And he was just thinking I was lying about it, or not lying, but he just thought like, dude, you lost your mind or something. That's what I felt like he was telling me. He's like, you must have like taken something or someone drugged you and you lost your mind. And then we kind of just didn't talk about it. And then I had told some other buddies that were more perceptive to like, I guess, paranormal experiences, and they were a little more not grounded, but they helped me feel more grounded about it. But then about a month later, I met up with that buddy and we got like mimosas and we're having brunch, and he's like, all right, man. So like, I want to hear the story. Like, tell me. And I sat there at brunch with him. And at this time, he's working on this like show this TV show that I'm working on. He was a background extra a little bit. So we had seen each other on set in between this period. And he basically, he hears me tell the story, like how I told you, probably just as much detail. I talked to him for a while, and then he just like looks at me and just smiles and just puts his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, dude, he's like, I believe you, man. He's like, that's some crazy shit. He's like, I told you not to go. He's like, I told you not to go. He's like, why don't you listen to me? And I was just like, I know, man. I was like, I should have listened to you. I should have listened to you. And we were just kind of cracking up. But I was like, I'm not going to lie. I even told him, I was like, I'm glad you didn't come. Because I don't think we would have made it out. And then he was like laughing. And then he's like, well, you're probably right. I probably wouldn't have thought. And he even said, he's like, he thought that he probably would be kind of like more with the naysayer mindset, like, no, let's just see. Or even if something kind of paranormal was going on, he probably would have been like, oh, let's keep on watching. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like when you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, you shouldn't don't go upstairs. Don't go in the basement. But then like someone like, they go in the basement anyways, you know, not to go, but you go. Like, so yeah, no, we were both kind of like, it felt good though when he was, and then like, that's what he brought it up to me. We hung out probably like a month ago, and he brought it up. We were like having some beers again. We were just like watching some music videos on his TV, and he was just like, yeah, he's like, man, he's like, I'm just glad you're over all that stuff, because he's like, man, he's like, you were really going through it. He's like, I know you're not crazy now though, because he's like, you're living your life. You've been doing stuff. You don't like always bring it up to me. And I was like, yeah, and I told him, I was like, yeah, I mean, I was just in a dark place. And after it happened, my wallet going missing, my car breaking down, the other car getting totaled, just like weird stuff happening. I remember one night I came home from work, and it was probably a month after it happened, and I had gone across the street to Whole Foods to grab some water and some snacks, and I'm about to walk down the dock, and I see so I know everyone that's on the dock. Like you see, it's like your neighborhood. You like, if you see someone in your neighborhood that you're driving down the street every day, you're like, oh, I've never seen this guy before. There's these three people wearing all black, kind of in like, you know, I don't like to generalize things, but they look like gothic, like attire, and they're over kind of by my boat. And I was on the phone with someone, and I was like, hey, dude, like there's someone on the dock for these people, like. And then my buddy is like, oh, dude, don't give them any attention. I was like, yeah, it's just weird. I don't know what they're doing. And then they noticed me. They're right by my boat. There's three of them, two guys and a girl. Both dudes like, one dude was like 6'3", he was like a skinhead wearing all black. The other guy was a little shorter, like dark hair. And the girl was just like a 5'4", wearing all black. They hear me coming down the ramp, because the boat ramp makes noise when you go onto the dock. And they turn around, they see me, they instantly start walking the opposite direction. And I just like pass them, and they kind of are just like, hey. And I was kind of like, you know, I just kind of do a nod, and I just passed them. And I was just like, I mean, it's possible that it's just some young punk kids just at the dock, but it was strange to me that they were like right in front of my boat, hanging on the dock. I'm like, I've never seen these people before. And it creeped me out, because the time period from like when my experience happened to then was only a few weeks, maybe a month after. And And then probably like a week or two later, my wallet shows back up. And I just felt like the wallet showing back up, I don't know if it has any relevance. It's just, I find it to be kind of freaky because I sleep with my wallet. I don't sleep with my wallet. I sleep with it like above my head on this like counter near the bed, and I put it in the same spot every night. And when I woke up to go to work the next morning, it's like 5 a.m. I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it. It's nowhere to be found. And I'm just thinking in my mind, oh, I must have like misplaced it. This thing is missing for weeks and then shows up underneath a bucket on the boat weeks later, like a month later. No note, no nothing. All my cards are in there, but they're all shifted around. So obviously someone went through it, went through my stuff. No money was taken out of any of my accounts, nothing on my credit cards. So, I mean, is it possible that someone near the marina was like, oh, hey, that's the long haired dude that is over on that boat all the time. I'm just going to put it under the bucket. But most of the time, I feel like when someone finds your personal possessions, like any experience I've ever had with someone like returning something to me, and if they're not doing a handoff, they usually like leave a note and it says like, hey, found your wallet, like all your stuff that like, and just say who they are. It was just like anonymous that my wallet shows back up. It's what I thought was weird. I don't know if I can relate it to this particular occurrence, but I don't know. Do you think that's a strange happening?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's strange, but it also doesn't mean that it's paranormal. It just could mean a various number of things.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't write it off as nothing to do with your situation, but I wouldn't write it off as everything to do with your situation either. It's like one of those things that go either way. It does seem weird that your wallet, because I mean, let's just put it this way. It seems like your wallet was taken by somebody, that somebody knew who you were, didn't take anything from your wallet other than going through it, maybe trying to understand you, learn about you, and then gave you your wallet back a month later.
Well, what's creepy about it is that for them to have taken it though, because I noticed it was missing the next morning and I had it the night before. So that means, and it's easy. I mean, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but it's not that hard to get into the place that I live in, especially like when I'm on it sleeping, because the lock is not very, I shouldn't be saying it, but I'm not worried. But so that would mean that someone would have had to have come in there while I was sleeping and take it. And it was right by my head. So that makes it, that's what the creepy part about it is that for it to have gone missing and I was like 100% I had left it on this spot and for it to be gone, if someone did then in turn take it and I didn't just drop it somewhere, that brings a whole nother level of like creepiness into it. Cause that means that someone then came onto the boat. I was sleeping. I didn't wake up, definitely looked at me, took it, and then walked off. And then I didn't notice until hours later, which is that part to me is what's disturbing. So it's like someone potentially knowing where you sleep, knowing your vulnerabilities, seeing that, oh, this is what this guy has to defend him, or, just like seeing that you could be an easy target is essentially what I'm getting at. That's what concerned me the most about the wallet situation. Again, I can't confirm or deny if it has anything to do with the occurrence, but I think it's strange that my car that broke down afterwards, but it had 100 some thousand miles on it, 120,000 miles, and it was paid off. So I'm like, okay, the radiator cracked and fluid leaked into the engine. So that makes sense why it broke down. I didn't know there was a crack in the radiator. But the timing of it all, it's almost just like I had this bad energy around me. And like anything I was doing, it seemed was like falling apart in this like short period of time. Like it was just like one bad thing after another. And I was like, is my life ever going to get normal again?
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's something that, if you didn't go through what you went through, you might not have been thinking that there's something to this string of bad luck. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there could be something to it. There could not be. I'm not really gonna say either way. But let me ask you about one more thing, and then we're gonna wind this down, because this is something else that you kind of talked about, and I think you kind of glossed over. I didn't get a good clear picture as to what you meant. You said there was a light that appeared in the sky, and did it shine down on you, or like a spotlight or something?
So when so say if you were in it was like an event, right? A nighttime event, and there was like a putt generator, and then there was a light to illuminate like the food trucks, but it's like a tall standing light that illuminates like the whole area. It was like this it was that type of light, but it was like illuminating, like it was set up and it was illuminating like the whole area essentially. Like not the it wasn't illuminating dance the like music area because I was more in the corner, but kind of like where everyone's campers were, it was just like shining down, and I'm looking for this light source, and it's not coming from anywhere. But even when I look up, it's hard to explain. It's like I'm not seeing a light shining. It's like you see the light illuminating, and then when you go to follow the light, it's just there's no light source, if that makes sense. It's really, I mean, again, it doesn't make sense. So it's hard to put it into. I think you're getting an idea what I mean. Yeah. But there wasn't like I didn't see like an energy source of where the light was coming from. It was just like somehow it was illuminated.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's as much sense as it can make.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Know exactly what you're talking about. See it every day. I find the light interesting. When I come out with my new podcast detailing all this stuff I've been looking into, I think people understand why I even asked that. There are the fact that you couldn't see the light source, I would say doesn't match what I'm looking into, but there's a light in the sky that's appearing before people. It has very specific qualities, and it has everything to do with what I'm looking into. And it's not a UFO. It's actually a deity. And so I that's why I asked you though, because I wanted to clarify that I wasn't talking to somebody that might.
Well, and again, like while all of this is taking place, like I'm getting hit back to back to back to back with craziness. So like most people, I feel like when they have like an encounter or something, like they see Dogman or they have an entity drag them down the hallway, but they're dealing with like one sole thing. Like I'm seeing things that are looking like demons to vampires to people flying in the sky, a portal, like things, people shape shifting, things growing, being blocked by force fields. Like I'm experiencing so many things at the same time. It's even possible for some of I feel like there's things that I saw that I like almost can't even conceptualize because it happened. It was like overdrive. It was like my computer was in overdrive. It's like my brain was like, I can't compute all this. Like there's too much information. Like it's kind of like I hear when people talk about like DMTs or like deities that they see in DMT, or like they see like the creation of the universe or something, and they claim that they're getting hit with all these things at once, and then they come out of it and they almost like forget important details. I almost wonder that if there's even like, I mean, I remember everything step by step, but I'm almost like thinking like, is there other like things I was seeing, but since they weren't as crazy as like the most insane things I was seeing, that I was like overlooking it.
I'll worry about that later. I'll worry about that later. Right now I got vampires.
Yeah, like yeah, it's like I got bigger fish to fry. And I can't help but to think when I was seeing like the people in the sky in the portal, like feeling like in Raiders of the Lost Ark when like Indiana Jones is like seeing them open the covenant and like all like the ghosts and stuff are like flying, and then he's like, Miriam, cover your eyes. Like it's almost like I was having that like moment of like, wow, this is incredible. I can't believe I'm seeing this. But also while being struck with like this like overcoming fear of like, this isn't good. And also knowing that I was under that area and thinking in my head, like, would I have been sent up there or something? And then I didn't even see it come back down because I just looked the other way and I started just walking in the opposite direction, just trying to like gather my bearings, like, okay, what is happening? And then I have that encounter with those vampires around the around the bonfire, and it was just so much happening that it. This is what I'll say about this whole thing. I'll sometimes look at it and be like, man, that's just some crazy shit. It's like a bad dream. It didn't happen. And then I'll sometimes wake up in the middle of the night or early in the morning and I'll just think back to it. It'll just like pop in my head and I'll be like, oh my God, that was real. And it just like, there's just a pit in my stomach because you know, when you just like know something happened and you like almost try to like suppress it and it comes back and you're just like, wow, that actually, like, especially in those early hours or right when you wake up and I think of that, it really bothers me because I know I'm like, okay, there's no other way to write this off anymore. Like I know this happened and that was part of me why I came onto this. It's like I never listened to paranormal podcasts prior to that experience. Like I was into sci-fi movies, horror movies. I fancied the ideas of weird encounters. I've had sleep paralysis growing up, but I had the only weird thing till this day that I only think else that happened to me when I was young that was paranormal. And if I can share this with you really quick, I was 5 years old. We just moved into this house in Michigan. The people that we got it from was an middle-aged Asian couple, and they seemed like really eager to get out of the house. And my dad got it for a really good deal. I remember him just saying, "Oh, we got it for a really good deal." And this is really the only true kind of paranormal thing I've encountered. And there's one other thing outside of this, but me and my sister were sleeping in her bedroom. Hers was next to mine, but we were a year apart. So we were at that age. She was like 4, I'm 5 or 5.5. She's maybe almost 5. And we're just like, I was going to sleep in the bed with her that night and we were watching The Little Mermaid. And I remember it wasn't The Little Mermaid movie. They had these episodic episodes and the tape would end and the tape ended. And you know how the TVs would turn blue? Well, the screen turned blue and right when it turned blue, I got up to go turn the TV off because that meant time to go to bed. I'm going to shut off the screen. So I got up, I'm going to turn off the TV. And then there's just like a knock on the window. And this window off the ground is probably 8 feet off the ground. So you'd have to be really tall to like be knocking on it. And I climbed up on the toy chest and I lifted my head up, and what I think I saw, I was also very young, appeared to be a gray alien, and it had a skinny neck, skinny arms, and big eyes. At this time, I'm 5 years old. I don't know what an alien is. Like I had seen Star Wars, but I don't even think I had the term alien in my vocabulary. Like this was in the 90s. So I was pretty young. I don't even know if I knew what an alien was. And I remember seeing it and I ducked down and I came back up and it mimicked my movements. So when I told people this, they were like, well, is that your reflection? I'm 5 years old. It's possible. But then I remember it like knew how to mimic my movements. And I ducked back down. I came back up again and it was gone. And I just have never forgot that experience. But that one in particular, I'm like, okay, I'm a child. I don't know how much weight I put into it. It's possible that the neighbors next door were pulling a prank on me and had some kind of toy, but I don't like to write things off like that. But I just feel like my whole life, I've never really followed like the paranormal until this experience. And, yeah, after listening to like a lot of these accounts and stuff, I'm like, wow, this stuff is real. 'Cause even if there's a percentage of people like misidentifying their experiences as something else and it's really not anything and they're just getting freaked out by stuff. But when you listen to most of these and you hear the conviction in these stories and then these voices, and you're like, okay, there's people all over the world, all over the country that are all having these strange occurrences happen. There's got to be truth to a lot of this. It's not just like make believe.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, this is my show. I don't personally believe it for my show, but say 95% of the people that have ever been on my show were lying, not even misidentifying, but they're lying. And there's 5 that were telling the truth, and it was actually real. That's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need for somebody to be, that's at a skeptical mindset to say, "Oh, this is actually real." Yeah, it's real. So I totally understand what you're saying, and I don't think that you're reading into things too much. I don't think that. Let's put it this way: I don't think your neighbors are playing a prank on you. So
I honestly think what I saw was a gray, but I will tell you this other thing, and I think you just need to hear it. And I know we've been on for a while, but I just think, regardless if you add it onto the show or not, you just need to hear this. There was some weird stuff happening in my house growing up, and I wouldn't, but I put it off as like nothing. Like I would hear voices, like my mom would come in, I'd be talking to someone that wasn't there. And, well, I wouldn't be talking to them. I'd be like responding to my mom. And my mom walked in one day and she was like, "Who are you talking to?" I was like, "I was responding to you. You called my name, Mom." And my mom was like, "No, you do not." My mom's a very religious woman. She's like, "You do not talk to those things. That's the devil. That's like a bad thing trying to like talk to you." And I remember going down into my basement and I would randomly a couple times, like, I don't even know what would possess me to say this, but I'd run down to the bottom of the stairs and I would say like, "Devil, come and get me." And I would like run back up. But I felt like when I would do it, and this was really early on, like 6 or 7, I don't know why I was saying that. That wasn't me. Like that was like something taken, like it was kind of like, why was I doing that? And I remember bringing it up to my sister not that long ago. She thought it was weird, but one really strange thing that happened was I was in eighth or ninth grade. My buddy Andrew and ironically Mark, his actual name is Mark. Poor guy, he had a really tough life. God, that's a different story. But Mark and Andrew are sleeping over. We're playing some Tony Hawk Pro Skater, watching skate videos, and there was a kid that lived down the street that was kind of like a bully. And we knew if we go and like doorbell ditch him, he would like run after us outside of the house. Like he would chase us. So it was like part of like the thrill to like, okay, we're gonna sneak out and we're gonna go doorbell. We're just being kids. So we sneak out. We go and like doorbell ditch him. Of course, he comes running out after us. We run into the woods, and then we lose my friend Mark, and we're in the woods. And me and Andrew make it back to the house, but we're waiting in the foyer for Mark to kind of get back because I want us to all go inside at the same time because I don't want him like knocking on the door or like making noise. And this was before the time where everyone had cell phones, so he couldn't just like text me and be like, "Hey, I'm here." Like he would have to like we'd have to like communicate in some way. So we were waiting for him, and he showed back up, and he's like, and he's missing his shoe, and he's like, "I'm missing my shoe. Crap, I lost my shoe. I think he has my shoe." Like the kid we doorbell dished, and I was like, and Mark just got these like skate shoes, and I was like, "Dude, it's okay. Like we'll find it tomorrow. Like we just need to go inside because like we're gonna get caught by him, and then they're gonna come wake up my mom, and like it's gonna be bad." And so we all walk inside, and we get into the kitchen. The lights are off, and at this time, my little brother is like 3 years old. My sister's spending the night at her friend's house. My mom's asleep with my little brother. My dad's working in Canada at the time. He's an engineer, so he's like on a business trip. So no one else is in my house. And then all of a sudden, I just hear a bottle cap drop. And we're like, "What?" And we heard like footsteps, and I was like, "Mom." And then we didn't hear anything. And all of a sudden, I heard the bottle cap get closer. It got closer, and all of a sudden, I watched the bottle cap land by my feet. And we were like, what the heck? And we were all kind of froze. We watched the bottle cap on its own fly off the ground, hit the wall. We freaked out. We ran into my room, shut the door, and locked it. And we were like, what was that? And then we're just like freaking out. Then we're just talking. We're like, that was really weird. And then they're like, the kid's name was Clem. And they're like, oh, I think Clem's in your house. I was like, dude, he's not in my house. Like, he's not that crazy. There's no way he's in my house. I was like, we saw the bottle cap fly from the ground and hit the cabinet. Like, we all saw it. And then we're just sitting there. And all of a sudden, it just sounds like a jar of pennies slams against my door. And all of this stuff just like shatters onto the ground. And we're like, and I was on the lower bunk, but my bunk bed was positioned. They weren't like stacked. It was like the one was it was like made like a T. So I would like Mark was up top, Andrew was sitting next to me, and literally when that noise happened against my door, I jumped like out of pure adrenaline from the bottom bunk up to the top bunk. Like I don't even know how I did it. I just got like superhuman like ability. I just like jumped up and I'm like on the top bunk and like we're just looking at each other and then we're like, open the door. No, you open the door. No, you open the door. And we're freaking out. Finally, we open the door and I'm literally think I'm going to be met with like a demon or something. Like I'm that scared or like a ghost. I open the door and then there's just like all this rice on the ground and like a bag of rice. And I'm like, what? And I like walk down the hall. My mom's definitely sleeping. I'm like, what the heck? And then I was like, okay, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We just locked the door. We went to sleep. In the morning, we get up. All of it's cleaned up. My mom's making breakfast. My mom was a pretty cool mom. She would get mad at some stuff, but she wouldn't really freak out that much if we made a mess. And we're all just eating and we're just too freaked out to even bring up like what happened with the rice. Like we're thinking like, oh, it just disappeared or like, I don't know. We don't know. We're all just looking at each other at the kitchen table. And then my mom's like, what were you boys doing last night? You guys made a mess. You guys are playing with rice on the ground. She's like, I cleaned that up. Like, can you guys not do that next time? And I'm like thinking like, what the hell? But then they're thinking about it as like, we talked about it later. And they're like, your mom's playing a prank on us. It was your mom. But my mom isn't the type of mom to play like a prank. So those are my only two other experiences outside of the Joshua Tree experience. And I don't think those ones hold as much weight. I mean, I'm not going to discredit them as nothing, but those are far less scary and far less paranormal on the scale. Yeah, I mean, thinking back on it, yeah, I guess like I've kind of had possibly maybe something following me through my life. And now I kind of feel like it's my due diligence to like make sure those things don't continue. But I'm also interested in finding out as much as I can about this type of stuff because I just feel like knowledge is power and it couldn't hurt you to know more.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I think it seems like this is all really new revelations in your life, looking into this stuff and all that. Just be careful with what doors you're opening because you're in the heart of there's a lot of evil in that town you're in, man. Hollywood is no joke. And there's a lot of the kind of evil you experienced in Joseph's Tree, or Joshua's Tree, that is like on that kind of level. Hollywood is riddled with it. And so just be careful with who you're where you're poking around, who you're talking to, who you're asking questions from, because there's a lot of people that you think on the surface seem normal. And it could change real quick. And so I'm just saying, be careful because, I mean, you don't, and I'm not even talking like, oh, be careful, you might open up a doorway into your life. Listen, you make your own decisions, you lay in it. I'm talking about like you ask too many questions and people that are heavily into
you go
stuff,
missing.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and that's what I kind of noticed too, is like things aren't always as they seem on the surface. And someone on at surface value can seem like a very friendly or loving person or give off whatever. But if there's anything that I kind of learned from this whole experience is just, I realized I was being very naive and for many years. And I mean, there's still aspects of me that are naive, but how I've been operating and going around is I tend not to have a problem making friends, but I have my close group of people that I talk to, and, I can make acquaintances fairly easily, but I noticed that I'm definitely a lot more cautious and I'm a lot more observant now of my surroundings. Like even, a bar that you go into, or, I was at this Thrasher skate event. They called it the Downhill Hell Bomb. And like the whole event, they're just like, this one's for Satan. And like, I'm just starting to realize that like all this stuff is kind of all intertwined in media and culture. There is like, I don't want to go into the Balenciaga thing, but obviously like they were doing some cryptid like stuff. And even people that aren't on the side of a conspiracy realized it as well. And they're like, okay, this is weird. And I think I think it's good to ask questions and to be aware and not to think you shouldn't take everything at face value all the time. You should ask questions. I don't, it's, healthy just to fall down the deep end of go down any rabbit hole, and just get lost and thinking you got it all figured out. But I think there's nothing wrong with trying to keep yourself educated and definitely like protected from, regardless if it's paranormal or if it's just a cult. Not every cult's paranormal. They're just, I mean, it could be, but it's just, you just don't want to get involved with the wrong people, especially in a city like this. And I think I'm going to end up this year moving back to Atlanta anyways. And part of me is going to miss California, but I think part of me is going to be kind of thrilled to kind of be in more of a, less hectic environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, man. If you would have contacted me after you moved back to Atlanta, I would have had you in here in studio because I'm only like 2 hours from Atlanta. I'd be like, yo, you're coming in the studio to tell this story.
Oh, I would have loved that, honestly. I've only really been on one other podcast, and it was my buddy Ortiz's, and it's not a big podcast, and it was like years ago, and he kind of like forced me and my buddies to like go on it, and I don't even know what we were talking about, just like random stuff. But yeah, I always thought it would be fun to actually like, when you're kind of just like in person, that's like what we've kind of lost through COVID, right? Is that like even a lot of interviews now, like I'll have an interview with someone for a job over the phone or over my phone like this. But sometimes you lose that like connection, like that like personal, like shaking someone's hand or what you get from like being with someone. Because when you tell someone a story in person, there is like a level, I believe, of like intensity that you also get. I mean, I'm not saying that you didn't get any intensity from it, but man, I would have loved to come in. I love your show. I love what you're doing. I never even thought I would ever in my life I would be speaking on a paranormal podcast. Like, and I tell everyone this, it's like, hey man, I got a crazy story and I don't get any cool points for this. If anything, people are gonna call me a lunatic. So it's just like I'm just sharing it. I just wanted to tell it, one, to kind of like put this at rest with myself a bit, but then also to like, if there's anyone else that's like experienced something of the sort and is like too afraid to like speak up, or if they hear this encounter, maybe it will like help them out and then help them feel like they're not alone, because I definitely feel like prior to like, there was a few months before I discovered any of the podcasts I've been listening to. I was just on YouTube, was on Google, just trying to research all this stuff. And I'm like on my own, kind of trying to like decipher this stuff. And I'm like losing my mind. Like, I'm like, have I gone crazy? Like, but then when I started hearing other accounts of stuff, it makes you feel better. It puts the, well, and also now from what I know, it's not so uncommon for these things to happen. I mean, maybe my specific thing is not very common, but like just to have strange encounters in your life, people see a lot of crazy stuff, and knowing that it happens more regularly than not, especially when you hear someone that's really credited, like an author or someone that works high up in any type of business, and you hear them speaking on something, it the it just the validity of it just makes it that much more. It just makes it that much more real in my mind, that I know now that we're dealing with a lot of things that we have no idea how they work. I mean, you probably have a better idea than me, but we're all like figuring out that. I feel like there's always going to be, I feel like in this realm, there's no way for us to understand. Like, what recently at CERN, they realized that, I listened to this physicist say they saw how these atoms were moving in this portal that they opened up was contradicting game theory and evolution theory. It was doing something. He was on the Lex Friedman podcast. I have to remember his name. I could email it to you, but he goes into this long conversation about how the scientists are kind of baffled right now because they're starting to realize our reality doesn't operate in the way that they thought it did. And they're saying that Einstein's theory of relativity could actually not mean that much. But he also said that doesn't mean that the physics in this realm, the mathematics that they have, he's not saying that their equations are wrong. He's just saying that their theory is off and they may have been looking in the wrong area the whole time.
Mm. I think I should probably listen to that. So,
yeah, it's 3 hours long. I listened to the whole thing. It honestly blew my mind. I'm gonna email you the episode. I mean, once you start listening, be prepared to have a 3 hour block of window open, because the way he articulates what he's saying is so. He was saying stuff that I couldn't even comprehend, but about how he was describing it, I understood what he was saying. And he doesn't even stop to really care that much about like the listener. I feel like he just is going off and going deeper and deeper. And yeah, he gets this whole thing about how consciousness is not actually connected to the mind, and how he thinks consciousness is in term God, but he doesn't like using the word God because he's a scientist. It gets crazy, but yeah, you got to listen to that episode. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Sounds good. Yeah, science starting to awaken to the idea that there's a God, but they don't want to admit it yet. The term God makes me uncomfortable, so let's just figure a different way to say it. It's funny.
Well, isn't science in theory though a theology? Because most deep scientific theory is just theology. So religion in turn is theology. They're trying to find the understanding of existence, which in turn, like science is technically like a religion. I mean, it has mathematics, but it's they're trying to find the reasoning behind all of this. But once they get so deep and they realize that things are contradicting themselves now, I think that maybe they can't get as far as they want to, because I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about CERN in Oak Ridge, and I know that there's nothing myself independently can do about it. But after experiencing what I did and learning more about CERN, because I knew what CERN was in Switzerland, but then finding out about Oak Ridge and sightings that people were having, and I was like, huh, it all seems kind of familiar. I saw a portal. I saw some weird stuff. People are seeing portals. They're seeing some weird stuff. And then Oak Ridge goes and says, oh no, we're joking. We didn't really open a portal. But here's the thing. Scientists don't joke though. They're about fact. Why? It's like a scientist doing stand-up. It's like, why would a scientist be making jokes? You're not supposed to do that. So it's like, obviously they're trying to backtrack because they don't want to scare the community, right? Or they don't want people to awaken to these philosophies.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know many scientists, but I really don't. The ones that I've met, and I have met some, they don't strike me as the funny guy. And I would say that Oak Ridge is more dangerous than CERN. It's just CERN is more well known. And I think if people actually understood what was going on at Oak Ridge, they wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Oak Ridge, I think, is far more dangerous than CERN. Far more dangerous.
I 100% believe that, because it seems like a more independent entity. I don't know that much about them, but it sounds like they don't have nearly as much reputable scientists backing them. And it sounds like they're kind of doing some like Wild West stuff over there. They obviously have clearance to be doing a lot of this for whatever reason. Obviously,
and clearance by who though? A government that does nefarious things to begin with. I'm just saying. I gotta be careful what I say. Listen, I'm just saying. Oak Ridge is crazy. So, on that note,
yeah, we don't want to go too deep.
Well, no, I mean, I can go in. It's just I have to be careful with how I say certain things that I know, because I don't want to get certain people in trouble. So I think I've towed some lines in the past that could have put people's lives and livelihood at jeopardy, and I don't want to do that. So,
can I ask you one question? And this is kind of a funny one, and I don't actually really, but I just found out. Like, I didn't find out about it that recently, but I found out about it within the past year or two, or past year. And I just think it's a interesting one. I don't know if you have anything on it or spoke to anyone about it, but what's your opinion on the back rooms?
The back rooms?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about?
Okay. So you can Google after this, you'll find out about it. So the back rooms is basically another realm. Also, it's these people, you enter the back rooms, usually they say you're in a parking garage or the woods or somewhere, and then you all of a sudden enter into level 1. And I guess there's thousands of levels on the back rooms, and there's like a website that like lists off all these like levels. But some people claim that they have gone into the back rooms. So most people that go into the back rooms don't get out. And apparently it's this like realm, and the first level is like this office space that looks eerily familiar, like you've seen it before. And there's these like robots and entities, and then you go through each level essentially. It's ridiculous. But I found it interesting because there's like people claiming to have like gone into the back rooms, but it's mainly like Reddit users or like a random YouTuber making a video from someone else's account of being in the back rooms. But it's very strange. It's ridiculous, but I think it's ridiculous, but I'm not saying that it's something that's not possible. But I just think that it just sounds like creepypasta stuff that someone made up. I was just wondering if you had ever heard of it. No. I don't.
Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I'm looking at it now and stuff, and I don't know much about it, but what the concept of entering other realms, that's real, and that is done by people. And
that's why I was interested in it, is because I'm like, I don't think the back rooms per se is a real thing, but I believe now, from what I've like looked into and my own accounts of things happening, is I think that yes, like going into alternate timelines is definitely possible, or places. And I mean, I personally have experienced the Mandela effect. I remember learning Nelson Mandela. I had a Black fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Bauer, and I remember her teaching us on Black History Month that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 80s. And then I remember I was sitting on my couch in college in 2013, and it coming out, and everyone's like, Nelson Mandela passed away. I was like, what? I thought he already died. And then a few years after that, I found out about the Mandela effect. The same thing with the Berenstain Bears. Berenstain. I remember it being Berenstain Bears. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think with the Mandela effect? Do you think it happened, or do you think it's just mass misremembering?
I think it's a combination. I think that there's definitely probably explanations to it that are logical, but there's also, the more we dabble with these alternate dimensions and especially quantum physics, like as far as I understand and what I believe, I think that they are dabbling. I don't think they really know exactly everything they're doing. At like I forget what scientist it was, but he was talking about, how they open up a black holes at CERN. I think he said it was at CERN, and he said, but it's nothing major. He said it's nothing that's going to suck the whole universe up or anything like that. It's just a little tiny thing. It's just going to be a flash of a second. He was talking about them pursuing it, right? They hadn't been able to do it yet, but they're pursuing opening the black hole. And he said it's just gonna be so fast. It's gonna be happen. It's nothing. It's not. But they're trying to do it. And I'm thinking to myself, you only know once it actually happens. So leading up to that moment, it's all theory. You don't really exactly know what's actually going to happen. You think you know, but until you actually do it, you really don't know exactly what's going to happen. Which is why some really wild things have happened at Oak Ridge. Because they didn't really know until they did. And they're like, oh, this is more than what we thought we were getting. But with that type of dabbling, I think that they could be, I keep using the term bridge. I really don't know how to describe it yet, but I think that sometimes when they're dabbling with these things, they enter us into these different bridges. And when you're in these different bridges, reality shifts little bits here and a little bit there. And I think so. I think the Mandela effect, I think definitely can be a possibility in that sense. But I do think that there's a lot of misremembering, like when words are very similar. Like for instance, I don't even know if this is a Mandela effect thing or not, but I'm just using it as an example. There's a lot of people that when they're talking about the Bible and the last book is Book of Revelation, they say Revelations, and it's not Revelations, it's Revelation. It's no S on the end of it. And so I think it's similar things like that where people just subconsciously they hear it and they say it a certain way, and there's groups of people that have always said it a certain way, and then it's the clashing of, well, it's always been like this. No, it's always been like that, and I remember it being this way. Well, it's because you remember wrong, just like everybody else, because it's something very similar, but it's not exactly the same,
Especially when it's on minute levels like that, then I think like it's like, obviously we all know an espresso shot is an espresso shot, but there's people that go and order an espresso shot and say an espresso shot, which is not the correct name for that. And anyone that's like educated knows that. But if someone said espresso shot their whole life, and then they're like, hold on, I'm having a Mandela effect right now. It's like, no, you just like are not that smart. And well, I'm not going to say you're not that smart for not knowing that, but you learned in an incorrect way, and you listened to people that spoke in incorrect ways. Yeah. So now you think that things are happening that aren't happening. And that's where I think we got to be careful when you're diving into some of this stuff, is to also keep your like foot grounded in like whatever this reality is, but then not to like I can't start like tying everything into my life as, oh, this has something to do with my experience, because then that's not how it works. But if something profound happened that's unexplainable again, then that would make sense to tie two said things together. But I live every day basically since it happened, minus the one sleep paralysis with the hand in the portal. Nothing profound. I mean, yeah, some rocking, some weird noises and stuff, but no, it's just, it could be various numbers of things. And, I mean, I don't think those things I feel like that type of energy just doesn't open up easily. Like it has to be like, like hauntings and stuff and poltergeist. It seems to be like a lot of that has to do with like a lineage type of thing that like follows family members like throughout time. But then again, I don't know the answers for that.
Yeah, well, none of us do. One thing's for sure, we're winding this thing down. So,
yeah, no worries, man.
listen, I appreciate you coming on and chatting and telling your incredible story. I think people are going to absolutely be taken away by it, and I'm going to get a lot of commentary on it. So it's going to be great. And listen, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be blown away by your experience. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, this guy's insane. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, we put out these conversations for people, for them to decide what they want to believe. Just like you and I have to decide how far are we willing to believe on certain things. I believe very far on things because of the information I've been exposed to. But everybody has to crawl that same path at their own speed. So, you know, I don't know why I said that, but it's one of those things like this story is out of this world crazy. And there's gonna be people that are gonna be like, that's because this guy's crazy.
Well, and so this is my whole thing about coming on and wanting to talk about it. I knew this, and it listed some episodes. I'm like, okay, my story, I'm gonna say it's the craziest one, but this sounds very out there and very insane. And yeah, I mean, I expect, if I heard someone come up to me a year ago prior to having this experience and they were telling me this at a restaurant or at work or something, I would be like, this guy's out of his mind. And so I respect that it's hard to believe, because I have a hard time believing it myself, to be honest.
Yeah, I understand that, because when we first started talking, you're just like, I know it's going to sound crazy. I know this is going to sound crazy. Yeah, it's going to sound crazy according to traditional thought process. Fortunately for you, you're talking to a guy who does not think that way. And so maybe I'm the one crazy one. I don't know. But yeah, it's just, it is what it is. But listen, James, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me. We gave people an extra long episode, but I think it was worth it for sure.
Oh yeah, Tony. Thank you so much for having me. I will send you the links to that stuff that you were requesting. I'll send that over in an email, the Reddit post, and the other stuff.
Well, that's the show, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far in the episode, I'm assuming you're at least very interested in the story. So please consider sharing it with anybody and everybody. In fact, let's just share it with everybody, because I think everybody can actually benefit from this story. So please consider doing that. Anybody that you think that, you've been talking to, trying to convince them the world works a certain way, and they're like, you're crazy, send them this story. At the very worst, they'll just say, you're even more crazy than I thought. Who cares? This story absolutely was jaw-dropping for me to listen to. I really enjoyed talking to James. Since this recording, James and I have been in constant communication. He's been sharing a lot of different things from me. And I'm telling you, friends, there's a lot of things that I can't share with you. In fact, I had to take certain things out of this episode because he wants anonymity, and he said some things that might give his identity away. But I'm telling you, I 100% believe this. I have sent it to people within the Hollywood industry. They have confirmed that they believe that this actually happens, and it actually happened to him. I've sent it to very popular, well-known hosts of podcasts that have corresponded to me, telling me they absolutely believe that this has happened to him and that this does happen. I have sent it to people that have decades of experience deep in the film Hollywood industry. They have confirmed, yes, these things happen, and they were jaw-dropped. I have done the best I can to vet his story with the information that he's given me on the show versus what he was showing me in private versus the people that I've shared the show with well before you just heard it. And they have confirmed, yes, this stuff happens, and they are within the know of what goes on in Hollywood. I'm telling you, as far as I have been able to see it, this actually happened to James, and this actually does happen. And I really hope you guys take it serious, because I certainly do. All right, friends, until next week, stay safe, take care, and remember, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. Bye.
Maybe I'm forgotten. at the bottom where it's hollow. My golems wanna follow roads that go below Agartha. They want me to chase my sins, but I'm not here to stay with them. Keep a hollow chain, but I don't got a rack to slide. Heard the earth is hollow, grab the rabbit, take a dive. But why? Cause knowledge has a little link to pride. Do you agree? Trapping at the geyser, I'm just trying to hit the tunnel. Them final Mona Lisa, just a frame of sin above. The energy is thick, I know they always wanna follow. Smiles through the bottle, wanna put me back in. If you are the champion, double the ante, let's get it poppin'. I appeal to Cammy, how can they ban me? Too many options, Who need a Grammy? Balls uncanny, know that they watching, South of the sun, I'm booming that bass, let's run up a galaxy, Maybe I'm forgotten at the bottom where it's hollow. How deep do you wanna go? My golems wanna follow roads that go below Agartha. Where the lights wanna go. They want me to chase my sins, but I'm not here to stay with them. I can't stay, come and follow me down. They wanna hollow me out. Set the head of Apollo, really choke us or take us to the moon. I'm not here to find out. I'm feeling misunderstood. My drive is something that's driving me further. I'm looking for Eden, but it's underfoot. You start in the darkness, it's just premature. My talents go deeper than Abraham. Voice cracker from source from the cherubim. Lies on me like wings from a seraphim.